Okay. I think we have all the committee members that indicated they could attend tonight. So I will call the committee meeting to order of the Ordinance Committee, this being Wednesday, May 11th at 6:35. With me, I'm Linda Vacan, the chair. I have Counselors Maldonado Velez, Counselors Givner, and Counselor Jourdain. Also in the chambers, we have Counselor Rivera, Jenny Rivera, and we have Attorney Bissonette and Attorney Degnan. And in chambers, we have our city solicitor, Lisa Ball. And we also have Captain Moriarty on the Zoom. So welcome, everyone. We have a pretty robust agenda, but I think if we use our time well, we should be able to move fairly efficiently. In the interest that we have a person in the chambers and a person on the Zoom, I would like to entertain a motion from the committee to suspend our rules and go out of order and take up items 4 and 5 filed by Councilor McGee, if the committee is so willing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have items 4 and 5 before us. Item 4, order that City Ordinance Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 5, Sections 2, etc., be updated as necessary based on any new proposed structuring of the city's law department. And item 5, filed by Councilor McGee, order that the city solicitor research how other law departments are set up in Western Massachusetts. How many lawyers does each law department employ? Are they full or part-time? Do they hire outside counsel or handle all legal matters in their law department? And I welcome Attorney Ball into the chambers tonight. And thank you for providing us with a heads up by giving us a draft and the data that was requested.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Attorney Ball is not currently in the chamber. She stepped out for a moment.
Oh, okay then. Thank you for letting me know that.
No problem.
Is she aware that we took up the orders?
I don't think so, but she's in the building. She's just not in the chamber, so.
Oh, okay. I had seen her in the chambers, so I thought she was still there. All right. Well, then, if she is not available, maybe we could return to items 1 and 2, and Attorney Bissonette could give us an update. So I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend rules, take up items 1 and 2 together.
Attorney Ball just walked in. Chair Regan.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So, Attorney Ball, if you can hear me, we took your orders up out of order since you have come down to the chambers. And so I would like to give you the floor. I'm not sure if every committee member had time to review and digest everything that you sent. So it would be helpful if you could give us a rundown.
Sure. I think some of you have heard me talk about this since I came in on an emergency basis last May. We immediately started looking at how other towns and cities around us are organized, just to see, how many attorneys do they have in the office? How many support staff do they have? Are they full-time? Are they part-time? Do they hire outside counsel? And so that list was sent to everyone on the committee. You'll see, places like Springfield, they have, I think, something like 17 or 18 attorneys. I mean, that's my dream, but that's never going to happen here. And they have a lot of additional staff to help them. So and even on top of that, they do outside counsel. I'm not sure we're ever going to really completely avoid outside counsel, but my goal is that we have more people in the office. We have some people that can be part-time. We have absolutely somebody dedicated to doing litigation. And I've talked to some of you privately about this. I think, David, I've mentioned it to you. I've definitely mentioned it to Linda, that if we had somebody who was doing our litigation for us and had that skill set to do litigation, and we have them on our payroll part-time, they're able to keep their practice, they're able to get the city's health insurance. We're not paying somebody hourly to do our outside litigation when we get sued. And unfortunately, we can't avoid it. It happens. We get just one case that involves a lot of discovery, a lot of court appearances. You're looking at an average of $50,000, depending on the type of case. But I can just tell you, just on one that we have right now, outside legal bills are $50,000 on one case. So you have, somebody that's coming in on a part-time basis. And I think the mayor, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get in here and see you all now, the mayor, when the budget comes before you, I believe has two positions that he's has agreed with me to put into the budget for the law department, $40,000 for each position. I'd love to advertise for that right away, but obviously I have to know first if that's going to be allowed by the council. It works really well for Chicopee. They're the ones that I really tried to model what I sent in an ordinance. I tried to model ourselves after Chicopee. They seem to have that particular model that works really, really well for them. Their solicitor is part-time. I didn't ask for the position that I'm in right now to be part-time because I think, somebody really needs to be there kind of as the leader and leading the ship right now and getting that department in a situation where people are not saying, geez, they're understaffed, they're not getting back to us. We don't want to do that. We want to keep people working here, wanting to stay in the office. I think there's been a lot of turnover, especially in the last, 5 to 10 years, not a lot of consistency in that office. I think we need to find ways to have people come there and want to stay there and work there. So, that's the reason why I am really suggesting that we make some amendments to the ordinance. And I did send a draft, and I was really clear. It's just a draft for discussion purposes. I'm not suggesting this is the language that we should use. But, to allow, the mayor with the approval of the city council to appoint and confirm a city solicitor, whether it's part-time or full-time, so that it doesn't have to be either one. It could be what the mayor decides he wants to budget for and what the needs are of the department. But most importantly, that we allow for part-time. We also allow, obviously, for full-time. But I'd also like the council to consider at this point removing some of the restrictive language that's in the ordinance that talks about no outside practice. It's hard to attract people now to want to come and do this and leave their private practice. I mean, you'll get people that'll do it, but when they have the ability to do work outside of the city, as long as it absolutely does not conflict with anything in the city, I think we would be smart to do that, and we're going to attract better candidates doing that. And I tried to put safeguards into this proposed ordinance that anyone that would be doing anything, that's outside of the city, on city time, that you'd need the approval of the mayor, and in some circumstances, also the approval of the city council president. But this was just sent really as it's some of the things in this ordinance I have not really changed all that much from what the original ordinance says, but the highlights are really that we allow for part-time work, we allow for attorneys to have an outside practice or at least be able to take on some outside work. And that's about it. That's about sums it up.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Thank you, Counselor Givner. And I also want to note that Counselor Bartley is in the chambers. Thank you.
Attorney Ball, I just had a question. It's my understanding that there's 4 people currently in Holyoke. Is that correct for the?
So there's 3 lawyers full-time and 1 full-time paralegal.
So the people we do have are full-time.
Correct.
Okay. That's the only thing missing from this.
I'm sorry?
That's the only thing that wasn't on here.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know what to compare it to. I wasn't sure if there was more staff behind the scenes.
No, that's it. It's 4 of us.
Okay, thank you.
So Attorney Ball, just to clarify, if you have the positions that you mentioned included in the budget, are those two part-time, would that bring you to the complement of 3 full-time and 2 part-time attorneys at that point?
It would, because that's what's budgeted for this year,
Okay,
or at least that's what's being proposed to the city council by the mayor.
okay. And do you know how that compares to the current budget? I don't want to get deeply into the budget discussion, but just to get a sense of it.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you the dollar amount, but certainly my budget has increased. And I have also asked for additional, I didn't just zero out the outside counsel line because there is going to be a layover of sorts because we still have some
Right.
cases that are with outside counsel. I can't just go, from 150 to 0, but the whole goal will be that it'll take maybe a year or two, and then, that we would be really not spending much in outside counsel at all.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking to see if there's any hands up. Counselor Jordan?
Yes, thank you. So I have a few questions. So, Lisa, just make sure I heard that right. The two $40,000 positions that are proposed for next year's budget starting in July are part-time, correct, at 40,000?
Yes.
Okay. Next question is, so I understand the part-time, makes a lot of sense. I've been supportive of having part-time positions. Obviously, as we consider the compensation, we need to be careful about that. We're also recognizing that, insurance benefits and what we're going to do on benefits is taken into the compensation package, because providing a family plan of health insurance is quite expensive to the city. So we need to be sensitive to that. It's actually very expensive. So I know that would attract perhaps some people who are self-employed, because that is a big cost to a self-employed attorney, especially people in a smaller practice that are not provided those kind of benefits. So we just want to make sure that when we're considering total cost, we're considering all these costs. Are we thinking about, we're going to give these positions vacation time and all of these other type of a sundry of benefits? Or are we, what do you think a part-time position looks like? Where somebody really is going to have either another part-time job and they're doing this for the city, or they're actually going to have another full-time job and do this part-time for the city. What does part-time legal work for the city look like?
Well, okay, so my vision, at least if somebody is doing litigation, is, they're submitting hours, and it'll be very easy for me to tell, how many hours somebody's spending on outside litigation, say, if it's, you're answering a complaint and you're answering, discovery, and you know how time-consuming that is, and going to court. I would absolutely want to see the person get health insurance. I'm not sure about the vacation time and the sick time. It's something I would have to work out with personnel to see if that's how much they would actually qualify for. They're not indeed full-time. But the health insurance in particular, I think, is what is going to attract people to want to come for that kind of salary. I guess I'm thinking a little bit selfishly that I'm just trying to save the city money where I can. I'm looking at what we're spending on retainers and paying somebody hourly, and I know that this could work, doing this and allowing somebody to work out of their office, and instead of hiring them, they're just kind of on a retainer. I guess that's how I'm looking at it.
Right. No, and I'm with you, and I think you're trying to think out of the box, and I've been very supportive of your vision. I just want to make sure that when we're doing the analysis, we're considering all costs so that we're being very transparent with what we're doing. That's all. So, somebody on a retainer is not getting vacation benefits or 15 sick days and all these other sundry of things. So I want to make sure that we don't open an unintentional Pandora's box here by calling somebody a, part-time employee, that it opens us into an array of other costs that we didn't contemplate going into this eyes wide open. So, if you're part-time and we give you health insurance, but you don't get anything else, okay, that's obviously, yes, I think the health insurance is going to be a big draw to people because, a self-funded health insurance thing could cost you $2,000 a month easily. It doesn't take much to cover that. I want to talk to you for a second about outside work. So more for the full-timers. Okay, I get the part-timers, and you're going to be under the direction of the solicitor, and they'll manage that, and we'll avoid conflicts of interest. Lawyers are smart people, and we have people supervising, so I'm not too worried about that stuff. But with the full-timers, we probably should still have some full-timers, I would hope, right? You're not envisioning ultimately turning us into an entirely part-time office, are you, or is that?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So, for full-timers, I can tell you in the past, I helped write the current ordinance as it currently is that precludes, these rules didn't just poof come out of thin air. They came because of specific reasons, that we prohibited outside work because unfortunately there were some who called themselves full-time, but then they would say, well, I'm off on Wednesdays, so I don't have to work on Wednesdays. And lo and behold, that's the day they're in court all day, on Wednesdays. So we had to write it so that, in a way that precluded them from doing that, okay? So what protections are in place for the city that, we have a 8:30 to 4:30 law department, and obviously you guys probably work well beyond that, because I see, especially Mike and Kathy are here like the chairs and the furniture. They're at all these meetings, and they work all kinds of hours. But what protection do we have in the ordinance and how we word it so that no one gets cute and says, well, yeah, I'm full time, but I'm Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and I'm off on Mondays and Fridays doing, various court work, or I do this and that, and I have every Wednesday off. And, how do we protect that? The way we've done it in the past is to say, you're a full-timer, this is your exclusive job, you work here doing legal work, and that's been the way we did it. So it's had a bright line. Whereas if we start allowing full-timers to do outside work, how are we going to manage that? What's your vision for that?
Well, my vision is to attract people that are good attorneys, people that want to come work for the city. I think that this would be something that would entice somebody to want to work for us if they had that ability to do that. I certainly do not envision that full-time staffers are going to be gone doing court cases, several days a week. But as you mentioned, none of us are working 35 hours a week. I mean, for the law department in particular, it's hard to say we're an 8:30 to 4:30 group, because we're just not. I mean, the reality is we're not, none of us. There might be days that I'm there at 8, and there's days that I'm there at 9, and there's most days I don't take a lunch, and I'm always, I may not be in meetings at night, but I am responsive to emails and phone calls at night and on weekends, and so are Kathy and Mike. So I think the important thing to me is that, 35 hours I don't think is an issue with this group. People are doing their 35 hours and then some, but I think it would make a lot of sense if somebody has something that they need to do or want to do for a friend or a family member or whomever, and it doesn't conflict with city business, but geez, they need to do it on a Wednesday at 2:00, that we don't have an ordinance that says, sorry, can't do it. But I think, if we do have oversight, and I think you know, if you, and I realize I won't be the city solicitor forever, but the city solicitor, you know, that gives that permission and is that oversight to the people in the law department, and if you wanted to have the mayor as well. But I think for the city solicitor position, certainly having something from the mayor, just being completely, you know, transparent about what you're doing and what you need to do. And if that were ever something that I needed to do, I wouldn't hide it. I'd rather just tell the mayor, you know, geez, I have to do this, and I'm just telling you I have to do it. But the way, and I understand, Councilor Jordan, why these ordinances are in place. I understand why it's there. Unfortunately, sometimes if it's been abused in the past, now, you know, the rest of us are living with it in the future. But I think the group we have now, and I'm hoping the group that we'll have going forward, it just makes a lot of sense. And I'm hoping that we bring good people in and we keep those good people there, because it's really important, I have found in this last year. Boy, when a project starts, it's nice to have the same lawyer from start to finish and not 3 different lawyers, or we're trying to get up to speed, you know, on these projects, because they don't end in a month or 2. Some of them go on a year or, you know, 2 years, and, you know, then we're spending half our time just trying to get up to speed on what happened in the past. So the whole goal for me is just to have people there and have them want to be with us. And I think that this is one of the ways that we attract people, and I don't want to call it a carrot, but it's just another incentive to come and work for us.
Right. So for example, like the full-timers, you know, they do have days off. They have benefits. So, you know, somebody has to, you know, represent grandma on a traffic ticket on a Wednesday afternoon. I mean, they can take 3 hours or 4 hours and do whatever it is they want to do. What I'm more concerned about is, you know how it is with the rules. It's never for the people that play it by the rules. It's always for the ones that get cute. And that's why we've had to have rules on some of this stuff, because believe it or not, some people thought, oh, I'm going to just take every Thursday off, or I'm going to take every Wednesday off, and I'm going to go be in, you know, down at the courthouse every day representing blah, 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 blah. And, you know, that just didn't sit right with a lot of us on full-time staff. You know, if you need a day off, by all means, take a day off. But full-time means, you know, this is your job. Like, this is, now, the question is, are we compensating people enough so that we can attract good people to come into full-time jobs? That's another, you know, question that goes here too. So I think you just think about the wording of how we can do it. I think we're all, or most people, and of course I'm going to listen to the discussion, I think most people are on the same page with you. It's just, how do we balance between safeguards and having enough flexibility so that we allow people, you know, to want to join our law department on a part-time basis or full-time, but making sure, particularly with the full-timers, that, you know, this is their gig. Like, this is, that we're paying them enough, we're giving them good benefits, and like, they really want to be here. And not like they're full-time, but they really also have this other full-time thing going. And that's what tempts people to start, you know, trying to say, well, you know, I'm here till 7:30 at night, or I'm here till 8:30 at night, so the city owes me every Friday off, or, you know, that type of thinking. And we've had that problem in the past, and I just want to make sure that we don't ever have that problem again. And we've had so many good, it's always the rare, once in a while people you get that, you know, these rules are for. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Kevin, if I may, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if I can just, one thing I wanted to add to that, and I know it's on the agenda tonight, but I just think it's relevant to bring it up now. I think one of the ways to really police this too is the time and attendance issue that I know is going to come up tonight. It's been something, I can tell you, that was talked about 10 years ago or 12 years ago, whatever it was that I was here last. We were trying to build the modules then to do it. And I'm very supportive of that. I've had several discussions with our personnel director about this. I think it is going to make people accountable. I mean, there's certainly probably a lot of things that Munis can do to keep track of people's time. And I think that, this is also something that goes hand in hand with accountability in terms of people coming and going and using personal time or whatever time they're going to use to do this.
Thank you. And I just wanted to follow up on a couple of points of Councilor Jourdain's, and also to greet Joe McGivern. Councilor McGivern's also in our meeting tonight. Just to follow up on the permission and the attendance issue, would there be possibly some way of writing in that if a person is full-time, that they would be expected in the office 5 days a week? So it wouldn't have to be rigid to hours, but just a little bit on point on regular days, if you will. And I just had a question about express permission. Does that mean a written permission or verbal? So if it was the city solicitor, it would be in writing from the mayor, and if it was the assistants, it would be in writing from the city solicitor. Is that how that would work?
As a lawyer, I like to always have things in writing. So yes, I think you're
Okay.
better. I think you're better off to have it in writing. Then there's no question about, who said what and who gave permission. It just, you got it on paper. You have it right there. I think that's the best way to handle that if it's going to be done.
Okay, I just didn't want to assume I knew what it meant.
And I can certainly, I don't think I said in writing, but I mean, it probably makes some sense to say that.
All right. And do you have any immediate reaction to the idea that if a person is full-time, that they would generally be available 5 days? I mean, I am definitely aware of flex schedules, for 10-hour days, and various schedules like that, that certainly can work without gypping anybody. On the other hand, we have on occasion seen some of the examples that Councilor Jourdain talked about also. But I'm just wondering, and certainly if you're running a department and you have enough people, you can make sure your 5 days are covered. So I was just wondering how you're thinking about that.
I don't have an issue with that. I think traditionally what has happened, and it doesn't always happen in our office, but if somebody is in city council, say, till 11 o'clock at night, which has happened, and, they want to come in at 11 o'clock in the morning the next day, I don't really have an issue with that.
Sure.
But being in the office 5 days, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think at this point, nobody's really, we don't really have a work from home policy. I think the mayor is talking about it, but not talking about really implementing it, just talking about what would it look like if we ever had it for anyone in particular, or, what would be the reasons to have it, especially in light of, what we've been through for the last 2 years. It kind of makes sense to look at what does that look like if we are going to do it. But at this point, we do not have a work from home policy.
Right. And I think we're more driving at the availability than necessarily the location, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
I mean, as long as, and everyone, I would hope that all of you feel that we're all available to you, and if we're not getting back to you, to just keep contacting us until we do get in touch with you, because I myself try to make myself available to anybody that wants to come in and meet with us, and I think Kathy and Mike would tell you the same thing.
Yes, and I would say that I personally have found you and everybody in the office to be very responsive. So my questions aren't out of a problem, just out of clarification and, like you say, avoiding past problems. But also, I think, we don't want to write ordinances or revise them to the lowest bar, assuming the worst case scenario. But to your point, Attorney Ball, to be, careful enough that it's tight, right?
Yes.
Is
Madam
there
Chair?
anybody else on committee or in chambers? I don't see any
Madam Chair, if I
hands
may.
up right now.
It's me, Councilor Rivera, if I may.
Oh, okay, Councilor Rivera.
Okay.
Oh, I
Harry-
didn't know you were here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. No, that's cool. So Attorney Abal, so the hours are for full-time employees. It's 35 hours a week.
It is.
And they work like 8 to 4.
The hours are 8:30 to 4:30 with an hour for lunch.
So when they come at night to stay for city council, those are more hours
Yes.
than 35?
Yes.
Okay. So how does that work?
It just we're salaried,
guys
so
donate?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean we try to do the best we can. It's probably good for all of us that this time in attendance is going to
Yeah.
come into play, because maybe
Yeah.
we're going to start to see the hours we're actually
Time on
putting in.
task, yeah.
I don't really keep track of it because I'm there. I'm not at
Appreciate
a lot
that.
of the night meetings, but I'm always in the office every day, all day. So I mean, I can always be reached.
So I guess I gotta say thank you to you guys then, because I just came from my job, that I had another job, and now I'm here. So like I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh wow, you guys are putting in a lot of hours. Thank you for that. Yeah. That was
Okay,
I also have a question,
Not-
Madam Chair.
oh, yes, Councilor Bibby.
Sorry. I also just wanted to clarify that a little bit. So what does full-time actually mean, salaried for your position?
So, like, how many? What do you mean by how many hours?
So Councilor Rivera just highlighted that it's a 35-hour
Mm-hmm.
work week, and that you obviously work more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm just wondering if someone wanted to do work on the side, I imagine that they would be doing that outside of their 35 required hours here.
Oh, yes, of course.
Right. And then as far as part-time staff in that office, what would that equal?
Well,
Hours.
I can only tell you what it kind of as needed, but I would certainly come up with plenty of things for people to do. One of the things, I don't want to get too off the track, but having more people in the office also allows each of us to more be focused on a particular thing instead of trying to, be a zoning expert and be a, collective bargaining expert and litigation. There's municipal law just really spans a lot of different areas. And when there's only 3 of us, we're just scrambling a lot. Do you know the answer to this? Have you seen this before? And I think if we had somebody, I'd love to have somebody that was doing zoning. So maybe they're working with
Specializing.
planning and development, because it's really busy up there. There's a lot of stuff going on. Mike is working a lot on the cannabis issues. That's something you need to have really one person, because there's constantly changes happening. So that's what I'm, I would envision, to answer your question. I don't think I answered your question.
No, you sort
They
of
would
did.
be in the area of 20 to 25 hours, but some weeks would be more. It depends on, if you're doing outside litigation and you're involved in a case, you might be doing 40, 50 hours in a week.
Do you feel like if people were allowed to have work on the side that didn't conflict with city business, that you'd get more quality work out of individuals? Do you think they'd be able to, focus more, or I don't know. I don't know how to word it really. I know I have 3 paychecks from 3 jobs, and you have 1 paycheck from 3 jobs, it sounds like. So when I look at it that way, I wonder if opening it up a little bit doesn't really allow for a little more diversity in schedules and flexibility, because someone might want to work crazy Saturday morning shift, or I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Just
Well, we're going to find out. I'm really excited if it gets approved to see, to advertise it and, see who applies and who has the skill set and what we need and what could they bring to the table. And I hope we get a lot of applications. I don't know. We won't know unless we try, but I know that the people that work in Chicopee doing this are very happy.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can have something similar here.
And with the flexibility are we able to put that in people's contracts? Like, you can work part-time with the understanding that you're also doing whatever XYZ?
Yeah, so we don't have contracts. That's actually a conversation I had with another department head today. Some cities have contracts with employees, like say, like their solicitor, they put them in a 3-year contract and it talks about what their salary is for this year, what their salary will go up to the next year, what they're getting in vacation time. It's a whole other discussion, but we have never done that. It might be something we might want to think about doing though in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon, and thank you, everybody who's been listening to the conversation. Through the chair, I don't have a direct question, but more of a comment, and I might be the only person that thinks like this, but when you put someone on salary, and I was on salary many years ago, it's get the job done, whatever the hours take. But that doesn't mean that when you're on salary, the responsibility of the 8:30 to 5 with an hour lunch is to make sure the office is manned. But it also needs some flexibility, knowing we've always had one city councilor, and this is by ordinance, assigned to us for both our Ordinance Committee meeting and our full city council meeting. I'm not sure if who's been designated that recently. I know Kathleen's with us most of the time, and Michael's with us most of the time also. And we appreciate that. But I think flexibility about hours for a salary person is important to the department head, and should be with good governance taken care of, because you just can't expect people to work 50, 60-hour weeks every week.
Exactly.
And I appreciate that. The other thing too is I missed the first part of the conversation it's been a couple of decades at least. Our city solicitor was always part-time. Up until Marty Dunn was mayor, and I think our first full-time city solicitor was Ed Michnick, and it worked wonders. But before that, it worked too, where the city solicitor part-time, worked their job, their firm, their business, or whatever their position was, oversaw the office, gave out orders, came in and signed legal forms, came in and signed legal opinions. But I'm not saying we should go back to that. I'm just saying it wasn't that too long ago that we did that. But appreciate the hard work a lot of departments done, and to each of you, thank you very much.
Thank you. So not seeing any other hands, what I have so far, Attorney Ball, is that we would like to see a little bit of clarification in the language as how benefits might work relative to the part-time, or maybe a little bit of clarification on that. And then hearing on the flexibility of hours, but the availability piece, what you might clarify with that. And then perhaps, I don't know, maybe express permission is perfectly fine language. The part that we talked about having those permissions in writing, those were the only notes that I had that were sort of some, perhaps maybe open things for some language. Are you thinking of anything that I missed, or is there any of those that you think are taken care of already?
No, I think that sums it up from what I have.
Linda?
Okay.
Linda?
Attorney Bissonnette? I'm
Counsel-
not recognizing the voice. Is that Council Bartley?
Councilor Bartley, yep.
Okay.
You're
recognized, Council Bartley.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very brief. Just through the chair to Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for all this. Just a couple of thoughts for your consideration. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. First off, if we're going to have city employees, then they're going to be prorated benefits. Okay, so you're not going to have a city employee without having regular benefits. They're going to be prorated. I don't even know where that's coming from. To think we're going to have a city employee and not have vacation or sick time and all that, I don't see how that works. It doesn't work. Now, the other thought would be, if you want to, well, we need to get your strong opinion, is if you think it can work, just having through a contractual arrangement with a part-time employee, then you need to come back to us and say, this is what's going to work better. It's either going to be a contractual at a certain thing, sans benefits, or I want to have a part-time employee with pro-rata benefits. So we need your opinion on this.
Okay.
You know, one way or the other. And so that way we can write the ordinance the way it wants to be written. Just you know, following up with some of the comments where I think if you've got a weak person in any department head, then the inmates are going to run the asylum, and that's not the case here with the law department. I think if you have a strong leader in the department who pays attention to what the staff is doing, notes the hours. And I would prefer time and attendance records. I got laughed out of here 6 years ago by the former mayor. Well, we don't do that. Okay, fine. But this is what happens when you have no internal controls over on the ship. People do what they want. And I don't think we have that with Attorney Ball, but again, we need your direct input as to how best. Do you want time and attendance records? Well, I mean, let us know and let us know why. So that's important. As far as, and then the way you write the job description, between the job description and supervision, I think, you're going to be able to control the output that any employee provides. So those are some points that I wanted to have you consider. And then finally, Madam Chair, to you or to the committee, I mean, I don't know what the game plan is, but I mean, at some point you're going to have to get draft language in front of us. And I would say sooner rather than later. If you got, and I got one more thing for Attorney Ball. So draft language is imperative, and I think that would come from the law department. So to get that before us as quick as you can, so that we can consider it. The last thing is, through the chair to Lisa, why two? Why can't it be one, or why not three? How'd you come up with two?
Well, you know how David really is, or Councilor Bartley, when I was here 10 years ago, and I keep saying that, but it's my frame of reference, there were 4 of us, and we had 2 support staff. We really couldn't keep up with the work then. There's more work now. There was no CPA back then. We have just additional work, and that's just one that just comes to mind that wasn't with us. We're reviewing contracts and, dealing with legal opinions is just one particular issue. So there were 4, and we couldn't keep up with it. Our outside counsel cost back then, and I remember this specifically, was $400,000 when I came in. So I don't, we couldn't keep up with it then with 4 lawyers. Now we have 3. We're doing our best to keep up with it. I think if we have our 3 that are there now and 2 additional, we just really could be knocking it out. And that's what we want to do. I want to be able to get this work done. There's so many important things that we're trying to do in the city, and there's not enough of us to be able to get the important stuff done.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair. That's kind of the feedback I was looking for, to understand how you came up with the 2. So at least I have a rationale. I mean, I'm going to vote the way I vote when I see the budget. I'm not going to say I'm going to support the 2. I'm just going to say, but I heard what you said. We'll see what the mayor presents for a budget relative to the rest, to your prior budget, and then relative to the rest of the city departments, because there's a lot of competing interests, as you know. So and not every department is going to get what she or he wants, but we all can be reasonable and fair, and I think that's all we ever try to be. All right. So I don't want to relitigate the past. I think I said what I said, but at least it's good to hear some thinking on this. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Councilor Jourdain.
Yeah. I'll just touch on one. Well, I have a couple things here more as I'm looking at the wording again too. Couple housekeeping things, just again as takeaways. I'm happy to send these in an email if it's easier, but I'm troubled by the language that says the mayor can pay them whatever the mayor chooses to pay them. Generally, we establish salaries by ranges that are set by ordinance. So I would like to keep that tradition. The mayor can certainly advocate, or a department head can advocate, but whatever we pick, it shouldn't just be, X dollars because the mayor says it's X dollars. I'm not a big fan of that language. I would ask you to keep it consistent to how we handle all the other employees. As far as city benefits go for part-timers, again, the goal of this is, let's do an analysis of, what are we at, 150,000 outside counsel? So we're doing 2 part-timers for 40 apiece, so that's 80. Now you're adding benefits, so that costs the city, $15,000, $20,000 to provide health insurance. And then if we start saying, well, we're going to give you 4 weeks of part-time vacation, and we're giving you 7.5 sick days instead of 15, and if this is quote unquote trying to model a you're on a retainer model, well, attorneys that are on retainer don't get those kind of benefits. I mean, I'm willing to go along with the health insurance one on the premise that that's the big carrot that we want to get a part-timer interested on. Of course, depending on if it's 20 hours, it's kind of nice just to say, well, hey, I got $3,500 a month coming in, and I can do all my other outside work, and this is one of many part-time jobs I have, because there's plenty of lawyers that work a ton of hours a week, and to just say, hey, I can bank $3,500 a month, knowing that I can do whatever I want in all these other outside gigs, that's not a terrible thing, right? So I think you're going to get a lot of interest in that. With the health insurance, I don't think we need to be giving out, oh yeah, and by the way, we normally, if you were full-time, give you 4 weeks vacation, but you're part-time, so we'll give you 2 weeks of vacation. It just seems like overkill to me. I don't see the need for it. So hopefully that helps clarify the concern around that one. The other one is there's some wording in here that says outside work during normal business hours is allowed as long as it's done with the permission of the city solicitor. I don't like that language. I don't think you should ever be allowing outside work during normal business hours. So I don't see a scenario where that's good. Now, if somebody wants to take a day off, if you're a full-timer, again, this really doesn't apply to the part-timers, so this would be a full-timer situation. I get concerned about, again, these crafting of these schedules that would allow that during normal, quote unquote, normal business hours. So I would be careful with that language. The other thing I wanted to touch on was the for-cause termination. I actually think this is already in the ordinance, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Now, the reason we put that in there, by the way, is to give our attorneys independence so that you're doing morally, ethically, and legally what you should be doing, and not be worried that your boss is going to fire you because you made an unpopular decision, right? You're doing what you are compelled to do, which is the right thing to do in all these situations. So that's why we crafted the ordinance, to give you some actual protections as lawyers. We were sensitive to the political nature of government, especially municipal government in the world we live in today, and the whims of the leadership. So we wanted to make sure that our lawyers were protected to do the right thing. I'm assuming you're still in favor of keeping that. I saw that in your draft, you did keep it. Your thoughts, and you're still in favor of the solicitor having a 2-year term of office. That is also currently in the charter as well, unless somehow that changed since.
No, that's in there. But let me just tell you, this draft, which I was very careful to say draft, I mean, this was never intended to be a final ordinance. It was just to give us something to talk about and obviously to make changes to. There's no issue for me about the salary by ordinance. I mean, this was just me drafting this to have something for us to talk about tonight. But The other issue that you just brought up about the outside work, I think we talked about why I'm asking for that, because I think that how the ordinance is currently written is really, really stringent, that it doesn't allow somebody to be doing anything at all during the week. And I'm suggesting that they be allowed to do it if they've gotten some kind of permission, but be it from, the city solicitor or the city solicitor and the mayor. I'm not sure whether the mayor wants to be involved in all of those decisions, in the law department, but certainly he should be for his city solicitor. And I'm not suggesting just run around and be able to just do what you want all week, but sometimes some of this stuff, as you know, has to be done during business hours, and we, as a law department, work a lot of our hours outside of the normal business hours. Some of this stuff just that may come up from time to time would need to be done, and so that's why I'm suggesting we not have that kind of stringent language, but put some safeguards in there so that it does not get abused, because I recognize we don't want it to be abused.
I guess what would be an example that wouldn't be a one-off where you would just take the day off from work, okay? And then what you do in your personal time is your business. No one cares about that. Like, what would be an example of a full-time lawyer for the city needing to do outside work during normal business hours on a regular basis?
Well, a court appearance, if they're involved in a case that has nothing to do with the city, and maybe there's a hearing, in Superior Court, that's not going to be taking place in an evening or a weekend. I mean, anything that's court-related is going to be taking place between 8:30 and 5:30. Something like that. It could be just something as simple as just meeting with a client, and it has to be during the day because that's all that they can do. But court simply, that's a no-brainer. Like, people that, if you have a court appearance, or maybe it's a criminal case and it's something that involves Springfield and doesn't involve Holyoke, and it's something, somebody wants to do, it's a friend or it's a former client, and they want to be able to do something that's going to take them out of the office, a little bit. I just think that giving people that flexibility, it's just giving them another reward, in my view, for, you work hard, you're working 50, 60 hours a week, and, we're going to let you also have this as, additional income, as long as it's nothing that conflicts with anything in the city.
But if they're regularly doing work during their normal business hours, doing this other stuff, whether it's this case, that's going to get ugly fast. I take a really skeptical eye to that. If that's the case, then they should apply for one of the part-time positions, not one of the full-time positions, in my. But
I'm not talking about regular work, Counselor Jadane. I'm talking about, like, if they want to have the ability to do something. I'm not talking about maintaining an entire practice at the same time that they would be working full-time for the city. Just giving them that flexibility, especially given that these people are all working nights, weekends. It's not an 8:30 to 4:30 job in our office. It just isn't. I mean, a lot of the jobs in the city, some of the offices are very clearly 8:30 to 4:30. The law department is not.
No, I'm
Okay.
with you. I think we're fleshing out some issues here, Madam Chair. If I can.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because this is good. This is a good dialogue.
I just want to make sure we weren't getting into debate.
No, it's not debate. I'm just trying to understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm glad we're having this, because it's understanding, like, for full timers, I'm just trying to understand, like, if you decide, hey, I want to have a criminal defense practice, or I want to have this other deal, well, I got to go down every Wednesday, or I got to go down every Thursday to Holyoke District Court or Superior Court or whatever. That doesn't really lend itself, it seems to me, to, like, being a full-time city attorney, or you're going to be having clients during the day. I mean, if you said stuff like, hey, I want to see people at night, I want to see people on the weekends, I want to do whatever, or once in a while, you know, maybe once, if it's once a month or something comes up. All right, at least I understand where you're coming from. I'll give that some thought, but we've had problems with that in the past, and that didn't have a good look for us. That's why we precluded that for full-timers. You know, part-timers, that's a whole different story. Okay,
And
thank you.
I understand that, but can I just say, I mean, how could we meet with people at night when we're in these meetings every night? I mean, we would have to work on the weekends only. Like, I mean, I think you know that, you know, there's meetings of city council and city council committees almost every day. And if it's not city council, it's planning board or it's historic commission. And I can tell you, I mean, you can ask, because Kathy was at, I think, historic commission last night. I think Mike was at planning the night before that. I mean, we're at these meetings. So I'm simply asking, is there a way to make this a little more flexible? Because we have it written right into the ordinance, like absolutely no outside practice for full-time attorneys. And I can't tell you with 100% certainty that there's, you know, no other city that has that, but I haven't seen it. It may be out there, I just haven't seen it, like written in to say, cannot do anything else between 8:30 and 4:30. And I'm just trying to give a little flexibility, not anything to be abused. I totally understand why we have this ordinance. I just think now is a time to readdress it and try to attract some good talent and have people have the ability to do some outside work when needed, not maintain a whole other practice. I wasn't talking about having an entire criminal or civil practice. It's just, you know, I have this opportunity that came up and it's going to cause me to have to leave the office maybe, you know, 2 afternoons a month. You know, I want to be able to say yes to that.
Okay, so can I just suggest that perhaps as we're working forward with the draft, and we've got these arenas that have been raised for clarification and some maybe new language that I hear the argument for keeping it in and I hear the concern for taking it out, but maybe we could have some sort of a tracking that would be part of it. I mean, I generally believe in letting the head of a department manage the department, but we have had the history. And I'm very happy that you're warm to the time and tracking. But maybe if there was something in that language that included a tracking of it, so that it didn't become too much of a percentage of the work week or something, might just be helpful. So given the summary that I had gone over, we would add to that the language of the ordinance relative to salary, and also some clarification around the idea of full-time people in particular being able to take on outside work and how that perhaps might be tracked, and maybe even reported out on occasion like we do with outside counsel. So that's just a thought for consideration. I see that Counselor Juan Anderson Burgos has joined us and he has his hand up. Counselor Burgos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as I'm sitting here and I'm listening to the discussion, and it's all great discussion, but what I'm seeing now, I do not know what former city solicitors, how they handled their departments and how that business looked like. But what I do see is, you know, an approach that not just what I'm noticing and witnessing here, but even where I used to work at the bank, it's, and I'd hate to use this, and I don't want anybody to get offended by it, but it does almost seem like micromanagement. And I want to be able to say that the city solicitors in front of us are very manageable and capable of running departments, and they know what staffing is like because they know that the work that's in front of them. And it seems like, you know, they're trying to just keep their heads above water. And I will be one that will state for the record that our city council meetings, whether it's a committee meeting or full city council meetings, are very lengthy, very lengthy. So, and it's not just the city solicitors, it is department heads who we have exhausted to the points where they just can't wait for retirement. They just can't wait to get out, or they quit, or they find another avenue, whatever it is. But I know this, it is exhausting for them. And if we don't change this behavior, we're going to lose a lot of department heads, and the city is just going to be congested and overwhelmed, and people are just going to leave. And it's going to keep burning us in the behind. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Reagan?
input, but
Councilor Reagan?
I would note, hang on one sec, I'll be right with you. I would just note that this discussion that we have in terms of this process of looking to change things is important, and it does take time for everybody to have their opinions heard and the issues fleshed out.
I'm aware of that.
I think that's how we get to a better result that hopefully in the end will work well. So that's what we endeavor for, but I take your point.
No, I completely agree with you 100%. And like I said, I do agree with a lot of the comments, but it just seems that, it seems like Attorney Ball is just trying to, she keeps trying to stress, I'm trying to make this work for everyone, for the city. And like I said, please, no offense to anyone here. I'm just trying to make sense of it all.
Yes, and I think at the heart of it, we all agree, and we're just making the sausage. Councilor Maldonado Velez.
Thank you, Chair Bacon.
I believe that was you?
Yes, it was. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Anderson-Burgos was making a good point about how lengthy our meetings are. We are first item and an hour into this meeting of items of 23 items. So yes, that is very true. We have very lengthy meetings. With that said, my question to Attorney Ball is, I'm a believer in unlimited time off. Based on my experience and the companies that I've seen, unlimited time off actually ends up benefiting the company because people actually are able to schedule their time, their own personal lives around the work that's expected from them. Based on this conversation, I don't think we're there yet. But I guess my question to you is, two parts. One, does the 8:30 to 4:30 staffed at the office make sense? And what would a work from home policy look like for you?
Well, we all can work from home because of technology. We all have our cell phones, we all have our laptops that we can take with us, so, we can do it. However, with that said, I will say, I think there's an importance to being in the office because you can, meet with departments and you can run things off of each other, which we do all day, every day. I have this issue, what do you think? Here's my opinion. Oh, this is your opinion? Oh, I didn't look at it that way. And if you're not in the office together, I don't know that you really get the benefit of doing that. So I think there is definitely an importance. People need the law department. We get called upon all day. So I think it's important that somebody be there, and it is. I think there was a time, that maybe people were not there, and it probably had a lot to do with COVID. But I think it's important that, somebody be there, that, boy, we need to run something by the law department. Nobody's there. I don't think that's a good look either.
Thank you. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any other hands, and I think we've run through the list of areas of clarification that have been raised, and I think we're on the same page with that, Attorney Ball?
Yes, so I'll make some changes and I can send them out. I'd love to get it done by Friday, but I can't promise, but I'll do my best.
So what I would like, if this sounds reasonable, is for you to put this in a legal form to come back to the committee on May 24th, so it could potentially go to council at the beginning of June.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to entertain a robust discussion tonight, so that people would feel that they had adequate time to vet this concept, okay?
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
It does.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion that we ask legal to put into legal form for the next ordinance committee meeting on May 24th, a draft for the reorganization of the legal department addressing the 5 issues that I had listed out earlier in the meeting. Can somebody
So
make that
moved.
motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All
Second.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, and we'll look forward to legal form for May 24th.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Since we have Captain Moriarty here, I'm wondering if committee would be willing to go out of order and take up item 7?
Motion to go out of order and take up item 7.
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item 7 is order to create an ordinance that drivers operating altering vehicles causing repeated backfiring, sounding like gunfire, fireworks, disturbing the peace will be ticketed for a moving vehicle violation. I want to note that our engineer, Bob Parent, also responded to this order in his summary, and I will be working from his report tonight, as he has a night off, I think a well-deserved night off, since we've been talking about department heads working at meetings a lot. So in his summary back to committee, he noted that we do have an ordinance that prohibits this. What we were not clear on, and maybe Captain Moriarty can help us out on, is if we have adopted the legal and Mass General law that allows for fining, and also seeking clarification as to whether the current ordinance would be considered a moving violation or another type of violation, like a parking ticket. So, Captain Moriarty, if you would like the floor.
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing?
You're good. How are
Hello?
you?
Great.
Oh, okay, you can hear me. Very good.
Yes.
So,
Thank
pertaining to that, we do, it's called altering your muffler, and it's actually covered by Chapter 90, Section 16. So it goes under a moving violation. It would not be any type of parking ticket, anything like
Okay.
that. Considering that the city already has an ordinance, we would still use our motor vehicle traffic ticket book, but we would list it as a CMR and or a VCR. So either way, there are fines attached to it. Whatever the fines are, I didn't bring a ticket book with me, so I couldn't tell you what they are. But it is considered a moving violation.
It is. Okay. Well, that is a very helpful clarification, because as one of the makers of the order with Councilor Puello, I knew there was an ordinance relative to noise and the like, but I wasn't clear what the nature of it was.
Excuse me, Madam
And
Chair.
so, would you,
Madam
Captain
Chair.
Moriarty, would you know if we have adopted the section of the Mass General Law? Would the fact that we have the fine associated indicate that we have, or should I go to Attorney Bissonnette for that?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Well,
Point of order.
I'll be right with you.
Okay.
Well,
Captain Moore.
considering it's under the Mass General laws, it means we've already adopted that a long time ago.
Okay.
And the fine is $55. I got a
Okay.
chance to look that up.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Was that
Well,
you, Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
You're recognized.
So I would just like a clarification on what VCR stands for.
I was dating myself with that. It's a VCO, violation of the city ordinance.
Oh, okay.
VCR kind of threw me back to the 80s, sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, there was also a, from Counselor Burgos. Did you want me to take care of that also? I didn't
Yeah.
see it on the agenda.
Anderson Burgos.
Yep.
Oh,
Would you want me to talk about
which-
that now, or is that going out of order?
which item number is that?
I didn't find it on the schedule,
Oh,
so I wasn't sure if I should talk about it now or if I should do that later.
Captain
So-
Moriarty, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry, Madam Chair. I don't think it's on the agenda, the item he's referring to.
Yeah, okay, I had, tried to get everything on the agenda that was ready to go. But you could, I mean, we can put it on the next agenda, but we can't do anything with it. It doesn't mean you couldn't say something, but we can't.
It'll
take
take me
any
about
action.
1 minute, actually.
Okay,
It's a concern of people parking in front of driveways, whether it's a
Oh,
business
okay.
driveway or a residential. When we do get calls on that, and we get several, we do send a cruiser. We try to work with the citizens first before any kind of immediate ticketing. We would run the plate, and if it's somebody who's living in the area, we would make contact with the owner of the vehicle so they could move it. We would also advise them that, you're not supposed to be blocking driveways. If we can't get hold of anybody, since if it's on a public way, and that would be a roadway that the city would take care of, we would ticket the vehicle and eventually tow it, because obviously if somebody's trying to get to work, we can't leave their driveway blocked. But we first
Okay.
do try to make contact with the owner so they can move the vehicle, and if not, we'll move the vehicle.
okay. Well, thank you for that clarification, and thank you very much for the information on item 7. I'm interested in entertaining a motion that item 7 has been complied with.
Motion.
Go ahead. Motion that item 7 was complied with.
Is there a second? All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item 7 is complied with. Thank you very much, Captain Moriarty.
Is it item 9?
You're welcome, and thank you. Everybody have a good night.
Madam Chair, we'd
Okay.
like to suspend the rules.
You also.
We'd like to suspend the
Yes.
rules to take up item 9 out of order.
Second.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. We are taking up item 9. Filed by Councilor Jordan, ordered that the city council adopt an ordinance that requires all department heads and employees to electronically track munis or other such system as determined by personnel department, all time off accrued and used on a monthly basis. They're also required to report all time off requests, approvals, denials, and usage tracking centrally to the personnel department on a monthly basis. The personnel department shall ensure compliance with city time off policies. Any employee or department head who knowingly provides false information on reporting of time shall be subject to discipline up to and including, whoops, hang on, new page. I'm gonna guess it says termination. All right, so we have item 9 before us. Councilor Jordan?
Yes, I think this is consistent with what we're trying to do in the personnel office. I don't know, was the personnel director invited to the meeting? Or?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good, excellent. All right, great. So number 1, we're attempting to purchase the module to be able to track time. 2, this will give us the ordinance to actually do it and create rules around doing it. And 3, this will give some teeth to non-compliance. Currently, and I'll perhaps Kelly can speak to it, but essentially, and this has been going on for quite a long time, we're effectively on the honor system of people tracking their own time. And they could be theoretically requesting time off when they don't have any time off due to them. And there's no internal tracking or check. This also is an important system because it enables the department heads to be able to track the time of their people and to be able to weigh whether or not a request should be allowed or denied. And it also, 4th, make sure that there's an internal control so that the citizens and the taxpayers are protected to ensure that time is not being awarded to people that don't have time and that we're not giving out more time than we should be. And hand in hand with that is it also guards to make sure that those who would be entitled to perhaps some retirement buyout or a buyout when they leave, for example, vacation time, you leave service, you're entitled to be paid that in full, or some departments have, if you have a certain amount of sick leave or other types of time, you're paid out at 100% or on a scale down to 20% of your time when you go to retire, making sure that those buyouts are accurate, making sure that all that time is tracked, because some of these buyouts, particularly in certain departments like the police department, get to be exceptionally expensive. I mean, we've seen buyouts in excess of $100,000. I actually, one captain during my years of service here actually had a buyout of $315,000. Who's tracking all that over the years? And the other sixth point of why this is so important is I don't think we're actually on the balance sheet of the city actually properly recording the true cost of what all this is in accrued time year over year. We only think frequently about, the time off that was being expended in any one given year, but some people are tracking this time over a 20-year period and building up these giant reserves of time. We should be accounting for that. For example, you could earn time when you were a patrolman at illustration $20 an hour, and then be paid out on that time 25 years later at $65 an hour or $80 an hour or $100 an hour. So this is something that really needs to be monitored. One, to make sure that we're handling it in the current fiscal year, but also really accounting for all these things. And if there is any shenanigans, and I hope that would be extremely rare, and I'm sure it is, that there is a mechanism to take disciplinary action as appropriate by the department head. So I think this is, it touches on all the aspects of government. It speaks to accountability. It speaks to how we operate. It touches on a huge sum of cash. I mean, our leave time is a very expensive cost to the city, and we want our employees to have it and to enjoy it, but we also want it to be properly tracked and be appropriate. So I think this is well deserving of an ordinance, and I'd love to hear, and I appreciate in particular Kelly's efforts and the mayor's efforts to begin the process of getting Munis on board to do this, and I appreciated Lisa Ball's comments on that as well, and I'd love to hear what Kelly has to say on the topic.
Okay. Thank you. And Kelly Curran, our director, would you like to have the floor? We'd be very interested in welcoming of your comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Councilor Jordan. And I think you're right, Mayor Garcia's support of this has already changed the culture in the city. I find more department heads and employees, I think, holding themselves more accountable and their colleagues more accountable for time, and just like sending in the form right away instead of waiting until like, oh, I took 3 days these past 2 months, let me send it into personnel. It's coming in quicker than it has in the past. Munis wouldn't schedule the PACE assessment until we signed the contract, and we couldn't sign the contract until the funds were approved, which was maybe 3 weeks ago, I think, I'm not sure. But they schedule out about 30 to 90 days. So we're meeting with them July 15th, 18th, and 19th. And so they'll look at what we already have built, because like Lisa said, I guess 10 years ago, someone tried to start doing this. So some of the modules have been built out partially, because every bargaining unit has a different, not everyone, but there's a couple different accrual rates. It has to be built out specifically for each union or unit. And so there's a lot of like back end work that has to be done. So they'll evaluate that and then train us on how to enter that in. So that's down the road. Something that I am interested in doing, and I've had a couple demos. So Munis will keep the accruals, but that'll cause basically data entry. but I'd like kind of an employee self-service, and I'm sorry, I should be talking to you all too because you're here. Employee self-service, where the employee can put in their time themselves and there'll be a workflow and the supervisor can approve it and then it'll go to payroll. So there's less points of data entry. I've demoed Kronos, WorkHuman, and NeoGov, and there's also Employee Navigator that has the function to do that, so I'm waiting to schedule a demo with them or waiting for them to give me a date. But I feel like the Munis ESS, Employee Self-Service, would make the most sense since it's already our main human resource information system. And to me, it would just make more sense, but of course, it's gonna come down to costs, and that will be an additional cost. But there's a few other benefits of the employee self-service, which is pay stubs won't have to be printed, so everyone makes fun of me in my paper, but we won't have any more paper there. We'll be able to access our pay stubs online. We'll be able to access our W-2s online, so we won't have to print them and mail them out to all employees every year, as well as other forms that could be available, like if we're doing queries or we're tracking if someone's gotten their COVID vaccine or something like that. We could send out forms through this system that we won't have to send out through paper.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Your words are music to my ears. I was here when we tried to make this happen 10 or 12 years ago, and it would just be wonderful to get caught up with the modern age. So I think this would be a great asset for the city, and I'm just so happy everybody's coming together on it this time. And I think because of that, you'll have the support of the department heads and will actually get it done because you've got a team together now. So that's wonderful. I'm not seeing any other hands. If anybody wishes to be recognized,
Madam Chair,
let me know.
Madam Chair, Dave?
Yes? Okay, Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, just to the chair, to Kelly. So Kelly, that is unbelievably good news. If you can actually pull that off, it would be unreal. So to try to, well, when you're here for, I mean, all respect, you know I respect you, but when you're here for more than half a minute, let me tell you, dealing with what we dealt with, laughed at, and then haunted. I remember I walked into a meeting 32 seconds late, and somebody's already posting. Oh, look at Bartley showing up 32. Look at that. Imagine that. It's the beauty of it. I love it. The phoniness of it. Thank God they're all gone. That's okay. So Kelly, just irrespective to this order, now I just threw the chair to the department head. So I mean, this seems like it's really just a order for a basis of a discussion. I don't really see it beyond that. Is that, or am I missing something?
So I didn't file the order.
No, I know you didn't, but I mean, what would you have? I realized that it was Kevin filed. I realized that.
Councilor Bartley, the order is to adopt an ordinance that requires the time tracking.
Well, there you go. So I'm just wondering, is that what we need, Kelly? Again, Madam Chair, just through the chair to you, to Kelly.
Sure.
Is that what do we need an ordinance to adopt that?
I think like Lisa mentioned earlier, having something written, you're able to hold people more accountable because you can reference an ordinance. Unfortunately, like that holds a lot of weight.
Okay, so we don't have time and attendance in our ordinances that we have to track it? I find that impossible to believe.
Not that I'm aware of, not to this like detail. It says you accrue this many hours after this length of period and stuff like that, but it doesn't talk about.
Okay. For some reason, I was under the impression that we actually had an ordinance, so we just didn't follow it. But we literally don't have an ordinance to track to mandate our employees track their.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, we have to move on. I guess okay.
Yeah.
Just one other question, Madam Chair, just for for Kelly, just so I'm understanding this. You heard the maker of this order say something to the effect relative to balances for accrued time, and is that something that the department heads are currently tracking now?
Yeah, the department heads are supposed to be. I think some probably do it really well and others probably don't do it as well. That's why we want to have one system to track them all so that we're not leaving it up to each department. Obviously, each department should approve their employees' time, but if we have a system, a system that keeps track of it all, we won't have to say, well, Kelly, did your staff take all their time this year? And then I'll have to go look. Most people have it on paper. We'll look at the papers and add it up and then hope that they didn't miss a day or a paper, and it might be wrong. And if my staff left and I didn't keep track of all their time, we would be giving a larger payout than what is owed because we didn't keep track.
Right.
Or we lost a paper or 5 papers.
Okay, all right. And just one other small, so this sounds like you've got already scheduled some trainings?
Yeah.
An
assessment. So part of the modules have been built out, because I looked in there and I can see where they're built out. At the school department, it was already built, so I didn't have anything to do with building it. So we're having Munis do an assessment of what we have and what we don't have and what we need to build, and then they're going to train us on how to build those.
Okay, so then just if I may, I just think that you're already bleeding into the next fiscal year. So I assume you're working with the mayor to properly account for this through the budget process?
Yeah, the Veteran Services gave us the money that it was voted on. Yeah, it was transferred.
Okay, so you have the money for that. Okay, we did that last meeting. Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, basically what we want to do is have an ordinance to back up the mayor and back up Kelly, and just say, so we don't have what happened, or as we think about what happened over the last 10 years or so, there was never really a rule that required this. And maybe that's the approach in retrospect, as that could have been done better by the council. And we probably should have supported them to make it a rule that this type of a tracking system should be done. Now, I'm just so thankful to Mayor Garcia and to Kelly that, they're right on top of this. This is such a good thing, and it just goes to show what a breath of fresh air they are. And it's very much appreciated. So we just want to put these rules in place to support them. It's going to have a lot of other, great benefits, because by having a central repository, it's something that Kelly can, push of a button, be able to see all the departments, where we're at with this one and that one, or, for if you're having time and attendance issues. But also this is something where it could spit out a report to give to the auditor to talk about what I mentioned earlier, which is, what's outstanding. So we don't get surprises. You can see this stuff coming, especially for some of the bigger departments like the police, where we're doing these massive payouts. You could start saying, okay, Officer Jones is 3 years away from retirement. He's got an accrual of $89,000, and Officer Smith has this and this. And you can start to, because one of my critiques in the budget process has been, we're not properly reserving for some of these large buyouts, and these monies should be put into the budget. We're kind of using ballparks and sort of guesses, and this would really be able to spit out a report to say, okay, Hoyle Police Department, we've got $3 million in outstanding time off owed to that department. That should be reserved on the books of the city somewhere, right? We should be accounting for that. Or a counselor or the mayor should be able to ask for a report that said, what's all my outstanding accrued time? What does that all cost the city? And is it growing? Is it shrinking? How are we handling that? It's a lot of these sort of invisible costs we don't think about, but you really need to. And it's just how we get better. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands at this time, and I'm wondering, Attorney Bissonette, do you feel that you have enough information to be able, if the committee requests, or Attorney Dagnan, I'm not sure which one of you would be doing this, to create a legal form to come back to committee on the 24th?
I think we could work on that, Madam Chair.
I'm just, is that too quick a turnaround time, or is that doable?
But we wanted to get the tourism advisory proposed ordinance ready so the council can send it from public service to ordinance for your next meeting. That's done. So certainly we can work on this as well as the law department ordinance for the meeting on the 24th, I think.
Okay, great. Great. I'd be interested in entertaining a motion from the committee relative to this.
I'd like to make a motion to refer it to the law department to draft into legal form for our next meeting.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I call that a 5-0. We look forward to the legal form on the 24th. Thank you very much,
good.
and thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, is there any pleasure of the committee to take anything else out of order, or are we ready to go back to regular order? Hearing nothing?
I motion to take out item 18 out of order.
Oh, okay. Is there a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oops.
Aye.
So item 18, filed by Council Rivera, order that the city of Holyoke establish a three-way stop sign at the corner of Mosier and Center Streets. So,
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I remember Bob had spoken to us about this a while back when it was brought up the last time, and also he sent the email with regards to his response. I'm okay with filing it to be ordered with complied with. Just
okay.
that's why I
All right.
took it out of order, just to get that out of the way fast.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you then. Let me read. Well, I already read the order.
Yeah.
You've made a motion that it's complied with. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh,
Could
okay.
I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Councilor Jourdain.
Sure. Councilor Rivera, is it all set? Like they're putting in the three-way stop you wanted?
So
You didn't-
according to what Mr. Bob Parent had said, that there wasn't enough accidents for it to comply with the state rules and regulations to add that three-way stop sign there. The last time he came with the actual number of accidents that happened within like a 5-year span or 2-year span. It was or 2 and 5 years, right? 2 accidents in 5 years at that particular corner. I mean, I grew up down there, and I've seen a lot more my whole life. I've seen people die at the particular corner, and I mean, not to say that I've seen it like that, but I mean, I grew up there, so I know what has happened in those corners. But according to the rules and the guidelines with grants that we've been receiving from state funding, we have to kind of follow certain guidelines, and that particular corner does not fall within the guidelines to add an extra stop sign. But so, I mean, Councilor Jenny Rivera is raising her hand, if anything, so she could speak to the order as well.
Well, so does the committee want me to read the report
Yeah,
from the
I mean, you
engineer?
can-
But I'll recognize Councilor Jenny Rivera first.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you. So I read the report today where, they said we have to follow the rules, and I understand, but just last week, I came out of work and I was parking my car, and here comes a person off of Center Street, runs the stop sign, hits the guy coming down Mosier Street. So they both turned down Center Street, because the one on Center Street tried to get away. Both turned down Center Street. I guess they must have exchanged information, and they didn't call the cops. So there goes another accident that, would have been reported, But I was gonna call the cops, but I see they stopped. So maybe I could assume that somebody didn't have insurance and they probably said something to each other and left. But it hit him. It like ate the stop sign, hit the guy, then he tried to get off on Center Street and the other guy follows him. But until something really, really bad happens there, I guess they won't realize that it is a dangerous intersection.
Yeah, I think what the engineer was sharing with us in the report was the technical aspects of how the Mass DOT looks at it. I think we understand that there's a danger there, and we have people that are just not following the safety rules, but it just didn't meet those measures, is what he was sharing with us.
Right.
So.
And for that reason, I motioned. And for that reason,
we do have the motion
Yep.
before us that it's complied with, and that was seconded, I believe.
Well, thank you for trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, why is it compliant?
So, all in favor of that? Aye.
No.
I'm in favor, but there's others that are not. So
No, I guess my question.
I'm listening for the vote.
Oh.
So far I hear 3 ayes.
I'll
I
say
think Councilor
aye.
Maldonado Perez wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just have mostly a question, like complied
Sure.
with. Yeah, so if we say no to this, it's saying no to this order is just following the recommendation of the city engineer.
Right.
So we
don't
can just
have
say
to.
no. But I guess yeah. So what's the difference between just being complied with and no?
Well, the only difference is semantics. They're essentially saying the same thing. The complied with sort of indicates it was reviewed, it was followed up on, the information was provided, so it wasn't just denied by the committee. There was a review done and study done.
Madam
Well,
Chair?
I'm with that. Yeah. So I'm.
that's
okay.
why I said that.
Makes sense. Complied with.
Madam Chair?
Is this Counselor Givner?
Yes.
You're recognized, yes.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that we can pass things even if the city engineer disagrees with them. So what's wrong with putting a 3-way stop sign in an area that we deem is a problem corner?
Madam Chair?
So
Madam Chair?
can I just respond and now recognize you, Counselor Bartley?
Yeah,
So the situation that we find ourselves in, if there are times where we could, and you might see us do that, say with signs that can't be enforced. Sometimes we put a sign up anyway, but it wouldn't be enforceable. When it comes to safety and road and travel and things like that, they have the standards to meet because those standards have been established for safety reasons. So I would defer to legal in terms of any liability we might take up if we went ahead and went over the recommendation of the engineer. But we can also ask legal to weigh in that regard. But I want to recognize Counselor Bartley, and then I have Counselor McGivern in
No,
the queue.
I was just going to suggest to you, just suspend and ask legal, because it would, the answer, I think, would be liability, but,
Yeah,
but there you go. Thank you.
thanks. Counselor McGivern?
Thank you, Counselor Bacon. Just my understanding, a little bit by memory, is any stop sign, any traffic light that has the ability to stop traffic has to meet a state warrant, the standards, and we would not be able to override the state warrant. And if you really look at the ordinance book, most of our stop streets and most of our lights are not even by ordinance, they're by state, and they're allowed by the state. Look at the new stop signs on Ray Street. We didn't adopt anything for that. Look at the new traffic light at CVS on Whiting Farms Road. We didn't adopt anything for that. The state regulates it, and if it doesn't meet their warrant, we can argue with them and debate with them, but we cannot put a stop in.
So,
Thank you.
does somebody want to make a motion to suspend rules for Attorney Bissonnette to weigh in, or are you all set?
Motion for order to be complied with.
I think I'm waiting for I was just waiting for the fifth vote. I counted 4 yes so far.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I have a 5 vote yes that this order has been complied with. Thank you all. Okay, so not hearing any other motions to go out of order, I will entertain a motion to take up items 1 and 2
So moved.
as a package.
Second.
Is there, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So item 1 was filed by Counselor Tommen, ordered that the ordinance section 12-4 flags of the city of Holyoke be amended to include the new regulations for flying the POW flag. And item 2 was filed by Counselor Murphy, ordered that the city council work with the mayor to establish an ordinance which will set the guidelines for flag raising events in the city. Now, these were tabled back in 2021. At the time, there was a lawsuit. And so I filed these so that we could at least get an update from Attorney Bissonnette, because that suit, I believe, was heard and a judgment was made. And then I'd be interested to hear what the committee would like to do. So Attorney Bissonnette, if you could give us an update, that would be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. As you may have seen in the papers, and as the chair just mentioned, the Supreme Court unanimously overturned the Court of Appeals in the First Circuit in the case involving the city of Boston's flag raising policy. They had a written policy that allowed almost all comers to be granted access. I believe the number was 349 flags for various causes, countries, and fundraising events were raised over the course of the past 5 years. An attempt was made by a Christian group to raise the flag to recognize their particular religion. That was denied. It's the only denial on record in Boston. The seeker of the flag raising appealed the decisions in the district court and the U.S. Court of Appeals against it being allowed to raise the flag, and the Supreme Court said unanimously that that is a freedom of speech issue, not a government speech issue. With regard to the Tommen and Murphy ordinances, those have been on hold pending the results of the Boston case. There is some confusion about what comes next. We certainly think everyone can agree that the United States flag, the state flag, the city of Holyoke flag, the POW flag, and other military recognition flags should be exempt and count as government speech. The area that gets murky is when you devolve it from that sort of speech into things that could be considered much more discretionary. And so that's where we are today, awaiting some guidelines. We know that in Boston, a challenge has already been made with a request to fly a Satanist flag. I almost said Stalinist flag, a Satanism flag. So I don't think Boston's going to agree to that, but they haven't changed their written policy yet. So we're following the advice of most of the municipal lawyers in the state as to stand down for now till we get more clarity, continue with flying the federal, state, and local flags, any POW flags, Purple Heart flags, honor and remember flags, those sort of things that have traditionally been flown. And the general advice has been you take your chances if you begin to allow others now to fly any type of flag, because then how do you say no under the Supreme Court ruling to an ISIS flag, to a Confederate flag, to a flag, oh, dare I say it, in Holyoke for the city of Chicopee. So those are the kinds of things I think we need to take into account before we finish drafting this. On the other hand, I think the section that Councilor Tommen has indicated are the new regulations for flying the PLW flag. I think those are entirely appropriate. However, I would suggest that we may want to add to section 12-4 the city's intent to fly the flags of the country, the state, the city, as well as other military flags. And then we can outline what the protocol is for flying the PLW flag. Unless we get some other guidelines that are relevant to our situation, I think that would be the extent of the revisions we would propose at this time.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
But thank you very much. That's very helpful. So this has been around for almost a year now relative to the POW flag. And I think that the advice we just received makes a lot of sense to me. If the committee is so willing, I'd like to entertain a motion that we ask for our legal department to put item 1 into legal form so that we can modify our ordinance, and that we consider item 2 complied with for the time being. And once we know more, then whoever wants to file something that's on the current council could go ahead and do that, because this also is almost a year old. So what is the pleasure of the committee?
Make a motion to do just that. We'll send item 1 to the motion to send that to the law department to make the amendment to 12-4, and that we'll just call item 2 complied with.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 5-0, it passes to request legal form. I don't want to say the 24th. You already have a few things on that. So maybe you can let us know when you're ready, and we'll put it on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll accept a motion to take up item 3.
Motion to take up item 3 off the table.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Filed by Councilor Maldonado Velez, ordered that we ban single-use plastic bags, straws, and/or food containers.
Thank you, Chair Bacon. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure I had read the whole thing. Thanks.
Yeah, that's all
You
there is
have
right
the
now.
floor, Counselor.
Thank you, Chair Bacon. So thank you for putting up this order in the agenda. I think it was one of the first ones I put in the console, so it's actually exciting. One important thing to note, we're not gonna decide on this today. There's a lot of, ordinance language, and we need to decide where we want to start. I'm a believer that eventually all of these things should be banned. I believe the climate crisis is something that people on both sides of the aisle are coming to realize that it's true. How we deal with it and how we face it, that's a different conversation. I just feel like this is a starting point for that. I know other communities have done the same thing. Eventually, the state will probably pass the same thing. I just want us to be ahead of the curve. I guess what I wanted to do with this particular order is have this discussion. Where do you want to start? Different communities have gone about it different ways. There's communities that ban all single-use disposable foodware. There's communities that ban plastic bags only. There's some that put a fee, like 5 or 10 cent fee. There's some that ban styrofoam, others that ban bottled water, balloons. So there's all different ways we can go about this. I believe the easiest way for us can be plastic bags, but I think that's just a conversation I wanted to bring, because I think it's a conversation we haven't really had, and just from filing this order, I know I've gotten some support from different individuals really excited about this. I just want us to make sure we're doing it about it correctly. With that said, I did say, there is ordinance language that still needs to be drafted up. I've been waiting to sort of provide that, because again, I don't want to provide ordinance for 10 different types of bans when we really just want to discuss one of the items on this list. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Oh, okay, thank you. If I could make a suggestion, I think it would be great to hear from, our business folks in the community on how this would affect them. And also to ask our administrative assistant to look into our archives. We did take this up a couple of years ago, and we had a fair amount of discussion then, so that we can bring that information forth to inform the current discussion as well. And I see Councilor Jordan's hand. You're recognized, Councilor Jordan.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I actually, you caught it right there at the end. I believe the council recently had something on this, and I think it ultimately went to a vote. So was there work product related to that? I don't want us to reinvent the wheel. If we're going to take a second look at this, was there something actually put into legal form and debated?
This one I was just saying to ask Jeffrey to look. I haven't looked that far back at this point.
When you get a chance, Madam Chair.
Councilor Bartley?
Well, is Kevin, are you set?
Not quite.
Oh, sorry.
Kevin,
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted us to, not totally start from scratch. Maybe
Right.
we can pick up from the work that was done before and consider the proposal. If we can get that circulated around, obviously I'm going to hold a lot of my questions, but, certain things that I want to learn about is the definition section for some of these things. Single use. So I can only speak for like the Jourdain house. There are no single use bags at the Jourdains because we use them all over again a second, third, fourth, sometimes fifth time for many different uses. So, I'll want to understand what does single use mean. Some of these other things, and then we consider the, I'm interested to look into the work product that was done by the Ordinance Committee before about the economic impact considerations. I've seen in some towns where they took these bags away, for example, and now they're charging the customers to purchase paper bags, or they're charging the customers to, they have to bring their own bag, or they will sell the customer's bag. So what's the impact on residents to do that? Is that something, I just want us to say that we're considering all the dimensions of it as we go through, or, if we did bottled, like it's illegal to have a bottled water bottle in Holyoke. Would it be illegal for me to go to BJ's and buy a case of water and I transported it across Holyoke lines to my home? Am I illegal at that point, transporting some contraband into the city if I bought a case of water? I just want to understand what we're considering. So I'm interested to hear the discussion, and I'll look forward to listening to what people have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment.
Councilor
So
Bartley.
Councilor Maldonado Velez?
No, Councilor Bartley had something to say, I believe.
Oh, Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. So one thing I'd like to know, before we go too far down the road. Well, first of all, Councilor Murphy filed a very similar order to this during his time in the city council, this most recent swing. So prior to his tenure as acting mayor, he absolutely filed an order to this effect. And to my knowledge, we didn't really, I'm not sure where it is. It's in this committee. I don't believe we ever took action on it to answer Kevin's question. So I don't believe there's much research or effort put into that. But I'm willing to help with this. But I would certainly, here's just a couple of questions I would want to know. One is, who are I know we have abutters of ours that, and certainly in Western Mass and other communities that have instituted a single-use ban for plastic bags. I would certainly want to know who they are and what results, if any, have, and what impact. I'm not saying on global warming, because that's ridiculous to think. But what results have they seen a decrease in litter, for example, in those municipalities? Okay, so and something data driven. So have they done any studies? So that's something that that I would humbly suggest that the makers and supporters of this order, and I know there's a lot of them, would consider compiling that and then filing that as a communication to the city council and referring it here so that we could actually look at something. So I know West Side has done it. West Side doesn't allow plastic bags. Then the other side of the coin, why do we, and this is just rhetorical, but why do we always have to say a ban? Why can't we develop something? West Side did it. I mean, maybe South Hadley, I think they might have. Why can't we figure out a way to incentivize the private sector to go ahead and do this to the extent that they can on their own? So whether it's the big corporate people like the shopping people, or maybe a very small business, if that's the goal of the city, and it probably should be to reduce our waste, and I would hope it is. I mean, I think those of us that care do a lot of recycling and a lot of cleaning up, and I consider myself front and center on that, believe me. And so I think it's important that we put our money where our mouth is, but just saying a ban and then we wash our hands of it and then we're done. I feel like that Holyoke can do, we can be better than West Side and South Hadley and certainly Northampton, where they just want to have a carte blanche ordinance and then go fend for yourselves. Well, why do we have to follow in their wake? Holyoke can do a whole lot better than that. So I would like to come up with possible incentives for, and one of the simplest ones on here would be the straws. I would think that would be the lowest hanging fruit. As far as food containers, maybe that would be a following up too. But there's certainly plenty of options for recyclable food containers. So if an entity is going to go ahead and invest in that, well, how does Holyoke want to support said entity? I mean, can we do that? I have no idea, but it's to me, I'd rather go about it that way than imposing. And then the last thing is, I'm not just saying here from the chamber, because to me that's just a narrow focus group. But if we're going to do this, then there's going to have to be work done by OPED and some other departments going around and collecting data, taking a sample as best they can for the little guys and gals. How are they going to be impacted by such an ordinance? And they need to understand that it's possible. I'd want to hear from them, whether it's them coming into a meeting, which can be a little time consuming, or better yet, have somebody collect the data. And so if those could, some or all of those could be possibly implemented, then maybe in a few months' time, maybe in the summer when it's a little quieter, we might be able to have a chance to look at these things and then maybe take a real vote and to make a real change. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it would be also interesting to look at how far we've come with the recycling, because I know a lot of places are recycling, at least the plastic bags at this point. And there have been some questions that have come up about the reusable bags. So we can certainly update our records. And Councilor Maldonado Velez, what is your pleasure with this? Do you want to table it and then get information, or do you want to have continue the conversation?
And Councilor, I know Councilor Anderson Burgos has his hand raised.
Oh, I see his hand.
I also want to make a comment too.
Burgos.
Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
You
So,
got the-
thank you. I think this order is a very good order, and whether each household, one household can represent how they handle their bags and their use of these bags, right? But that doesn't represent the community or the country, right, on how we manage and dispose of these bags. But if we're considering data, then I just recently visited Pulaski Park. There's plenty of data behind the brick wall that is along the line of the railroad. Plenty of data, plenty of it. And not just there, throughout the whole entire city. This is something where I feel it needs to be addressed, and whether it's, I don't know, which whatever it's going to look like, it needs to be addressed. And I think this is the right direction. And Jose, Counselor Maldonado Velez is onto something here. And I think we should all come together and figure this out. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for me, when I saw the order too, I was excited mostly because growing up in the flats, the wind blows, and when you look at the fences throughout the flats and South Holyoke, all you see is them peppered with plastic bags everywhere, all throughout the community. And as a kid growing up, I always wondered, like, why do they still sell plastic bags if people just throw them out on the floor all the time? So like, to me, it's like, I understand that there may be a cost, but this is more of like a quality of life issue for the community overall, for me at least. But I just wanted to say thank you for filing the order at least.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say one last thing? And then, yeah.
Sure. Counselor Maldonado Velez.
Thank you, Chair Bacon. So just off some of the points some of the other councilors were making, I know Amherst, I believe it's 2016 that they passed their ban on plastic bags. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, it's not an overnight ban. I think theirs was staggered, like 6 months in. Certain businesses had to meet that requirement. A year later, they had to meet. And if for some reason individual business has some sort of like issue or like monetary barriers when it comes to imposing this, like there's actual language where they can apply for an exemption. So like that will hopefully also help like smaller businesses and all these things. But yeah, I heard all the data stuff. I definitely agree with that. As far as the language, I think that's the conversation. As far as like what is single use? I mean, I know when I think of like single use plastic bags we throw out trash every week. That technically is a single-use plastic bag. So I think that's the conversation I want us to have here and really define that. So totally agree with that, Councilor Jordan. And the last point, as far as your question, Bacon, Chair Bacon, I would say, yeah, I would love to table this, provide the committee with more information, and hopefully, within the next couple months, we will have something to go forward.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. So is that a motion to table?
Motion to table item 3.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed?
Well,
So that's a 5-0 to table. Thank you. And now I'll entertain a motion to take up item 6.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 6, Counselor Maldonado Velez, you're up again. Order that we look into creating an ordinance around trash pickup that is similar to when it snows, where residents, business owners, and the city are responsible for the trash on their property.
Thank you, Chair
Counselor.
Bacon. So I think this was like right around the time we were passing the snow removal ordinance. And I just know in conversation, campaigning, with door knocking, a lot of the biggest concern with people is the trash in our city. So this, in the past item, councilors mentioned like the trash, and that's definitely part of the strategy about banning plastic bags. But also, so then with this, as far as like trash is concerned, I was looking at our ordinance, and the whole section, I want to say chapter 74 is the whole article on litter. So what I realized, a lot of our language pretty much does cover this, where it's like pretty much property owners are responsible for the trash on their property, responsible for the trash on their sidewalks. There's a whole section on maintenance of trash containers and what does it mean. When I put in this order, one of the suggestions from neighbors was, they wouldn't mind being in charge of changing the trash on their corner as long as the trash receptacle is being provided. But I do know another order, but I believe Councilor Bartley and Councilor Puello had put in around like adding trash receptacles around the city. So that can be a conversation that pairs up with this. Basically what I'm trying to say, our ordinance language already addresses this. I think the conversation here that we've been having since we started is, how do we enforce things that we already have in our city, and how do we make residents aware that it's written in there somewhere, and we should be responsible for keeping our city clean? So.
Okay, so At this point,
Counselor
are
Jordan,
are
sorry.
you finding this complied with? Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment Councilor Maldonado Velez for filing this order. It's a really important order that he filed. The trash problem in the city is really serious, and it's something that we really need to take a concerted effort on and really think about more approaches as to how we solve this. And I think it's going to require a lot more resources for us to do this. Obviously, it does all come down to enforcement, but where there is rules and regulations that perhaps we do need to have in effect, we could strengthen some things. But, you know, I think about if we don't have enough enforcement resources, and if this is totally about the law is good, like we're solid on the rules, then it becomes a combination of education and enforcement. So we need to have a concerted effort on education of the public and of our departments, that this is a very real problem. It's an intolerable, continuing problem. Why? The number one issue plaguing our community is a reputational one, right? Drive down City Hall, drive down High Street towards City Hall and throughout, in particular, the main road of the city. If you can get by all the potholes, which is a separate issue, it leaves the impression that what on earth is going on in Holyoke? These people don't get it. Like, this is not a city I want to either move to or invest in. And if I am going to do those things, it's in spite of this, not because of this. So we're our own worst enemy. And I don't say these things to be critical. I just say them because I want us to get better, right? Like, I've lived my whole life in this city. I have done anything I could to make this city a better place. And I see ourselves shooting ourselves in the foot. And one of the biggest things we could do to help ourselves, because we have so many complex problems. This one is somewhat complex, but not that complex. We could fix this through education and enforcement. So you tell me, on the enforcement side, what resources do we need to bring as a city government to bear to get a clean city? You go to other cities throughout this country, they don't look anything like the trash that's all over Holyoke. And I don't drink the Kool-Aid just because I love Holyoke and say, everything's great, you know, everything's clean, everything's beautiful. No. We have to admit we have a problem here. And you drive down High Street, there is trash all over the sides of the street, and it isn't just High Street. That's unacceptable. That cannot continue. And there's a lot of reasons it's happening. I hear things about people aren't dumping their dumpsters, there's this, there's that, blah, blah, blah. Then we need to have more enforcement to do that. If the police need a dedicated officer that all they do is hand out trash tickets all day long and go after people, we need to hire another code inspector to go and make code violations because people have trash or tires or whatever else. Let's hire them, because whatever that cost is, say it costs $300,000 a year to hire a new team of people, and all their job is, we go around and we pick up trash, we hand out tickets, we have a whole team to do that. It'd be the best $300,000 we could ever spend. The ROI on that, to our reputation, to our image, to everything, if this city was clean, okay? And I think we need to have a huge conversation about a clean Holyoke. And it's something I think we can all rally around. It's something I think we all agree needs to be done. It happens in other cities. It can happen here. This doesn't have to be this way. And Councilor Maldonado Velez's order touches on it. And it's way beyond just people cleaning their own properties. It's these common spaces, these public spaces. And I would really like, and I'm gonna file an order on it, and I'd be happy to have anybody that wanna join on to talk about is it more money? Is it more education? Is it like, we just gotta make this a huge priority, the trash problem in town. And we can do it. This is something we collectively can do this together. And I'm optimistic it can be done because everybody wants it to be done. It just doesn't seem to get done. And it's nobody's in particular's fault. It's just something as a community we gotta all do together. So I'm glad he filed this, and we really gotta think this one through. And I know we've built a team together on dangerous buildings. This might be worth its own committee to talk about a clean Holyoke and the trash problem in this city. Because it just keeps coming up in conversations about when people from other areas or whatnot knock our city. And we can fix this. So thank you for filing this order. I'll look forward to having more in this conversation.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Counselor Bacon. Agreed with the problem, agreed that we have to do something about it. Just a little bit of caution, and I think as we write these ordinances, we have to focus on who is the perpetrator when it comes to trash. The ordinance to enforce the pickup of trash, if you go to Montreal in Canada, the city, they pick up trash every day, every night, and that city is considered as clean as any city in the country of Canada. We've studied the trash issue. We have three problems, and the obvious one is not the one that was as obvious as we thought. Everybody thought trash downtown and Maple Street on High Street was due to litter bugs. Part of it is, but the vast bulk of trash that ends up on the downtown streets is a wind tunnel effect in the alleyways coming out of the apartment buildings and commercial buildings with dumpsters that are overflowing. We need to enforce dumpster laws that they should be locked and they should not be overflowing, because once it gets out of the dumpster, you get a windy day, it ends up in front of somebody's storefront. And I don't believe we can just solve the problem by penalizing someone who's doing the right thing with property that they own because trash gets there illegal. Second problem, alleyways throughout Ward 4, throughout going down, into the lower sections of upper sections of Wards 1 and 2. The dumpsters are there. There's also a lot of illegal dumping of people driving down an alleyway, throwing tires out on somebody's property. Mind you, an alleyway is half of the property owners on each side of the alleyway itself, although the city keeps an emergency easement for utilities and for emergency vehicles. We do nothing to enforce those perpetrators. And I know neighbors used to live by on Beach Street that are picking up their property, their alleyway, once or twice a week and begging for help from the city because they go out there and they got cameras and they'll show it to the police department, they'll show it to the building department, the health department. Why is the owner of a property being penalized when we're not doing anything about illegal dumping, into private property and not to public property? And yes, we should go after litter bugs and ticket litter bugs. I drove down with Jenny, and I drove taking a ride this past weekend, and we stopped at the down at the marina. We're watching them getting ready to put the boats out, the rowing boats out, and getting the place open for people to use that. And there were some people just sitting there, and one of the workers was walking down towards the dock, and as he turned around, the car about 5 cars over from where we were, the guy was getting ready to leave, took his empty beer can and threw it in the dirt, threw it into the grass. The worker stopped, said, "Excuse me, sir, but please pick that up." That's what we need, is to get people educated, ticket the people who are doing the dumping, illegal, the littering, ticket the people who are not getting their dumpsters picked up in a timely fashion so it becomes part of the wind tunnel effect. We have to stop making laws that punish the people that own property and are just doing the right thing.
Thank you. I'll just make a brief comment, and this will be dating myself, but there might be others in the room who remember the name Litterbug, and that was all part of an educational program to really reach out to people throughout the community to say, don't throw your trash on the street, because it is a quality of life issue, and those things do lead to bigger things. And so I think people that are talking about the educational aspect are really hitting on something. And if our schools could pick it up and the kids could bring it home, that might be a really good thing too. Because I do see people back to the old ways of cleaning their car by throwing everything out the window from time to time. But anyway, thank you for the order, Councilor Maldonado Velez. What is your pleasure?
Table for now. Well, I
Okay.
just real quick, just response to everyone. I agree. I think, enforcement is one conversation we've been having here, but education is definitely a huge one for our city. Like, we pass ordinances, we pass all these things. How do our people know what we're doing here? So yes, I completely agree with that. And with on Councilor McGivern's point, I live on the corner of Pine and Essex. We can pick up the trash at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m., whatever, and 2 hours later, there's trash all over the property because of the wind tunnel. So my goal with this order would, I know like May 25th, the Sheriff's Department is coming down with some volunteers. Like, is this something, I don't know if it's a possibility. I know this would be a separate order where we have like a once a month day of cleaning, and I don't know, where residents all get involved. And, those are the sort of alternatives that we like to look at. Like, definitely not trying to punish people that are doing the right thing. But yeah, how do we get us to do the right thing? But I guess as far as right now, table it, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so this is tabled for now. And I'll entertain a motion to take up item 8.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Council Bartley?
Yeah, would you be so gracious as the committee just to take 8, 10, and 12? I'm just in interest of time. I just really have to go. So I'll just have a brief discussion on these 3 points, and I'll move on.
If a committee member is willing to make a motion to suspend rules and take up 8, 10,
Motion to suspend the
and
rules
12.
and take up items 8, 10, and 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so item 8 is ordered that a policy be implemented as to if and when any city vehicle, including police cars, may be rented for non-city related business. Item 10 is ordered that until residents are offered an opportunity to meet in the neighborhood with public officials and public board members who are making decisions with little to zero neighborhood input, the city shall not spend any funds or incur any costs for any new buildings, including a school. Item 12, ordered that the city council and DPW amend any ordinances to allow for road improvements at Whiting Farms Road, to allow for a dedicated left-hand turn into Kmart Plaza, and to allow for motorists to also travel towards the mall in a dedicated lane. And just by way of information, Councilor Bartley, I do have a response from our city engineer on item 12, but you have the floor.
I do have item 12, but let's just go. This can be pretty quick, so whether there's a discussion, just for your consideration, thanks to the committee for taking these up as a package. On number 8, this is something I was a little bit, because I never seen it. I never seen a parade of police cars during a political campaign, such as I saw last year, and that's what prompted this. I did have some follow up with the chief of police and the candidate who instituted it, but there were 5 or 6 police cars in marked cruisers in the middle of a campaign rally. Now, like I said, I've been in more than one campaign. This is the very first time I've seen that. So if we're gonna and I understand that they were paid for by the campaign, but to think that that was allowed and, you know, and in an ad hoc kind of a one-off way, regardless of whether they were paid for, regardless of whether it was how it was paid, there is, to my knowledge, there is no policy whatsoever. So if we're going to allow this, then to use city resources, whether it's a marked cruiser or a DPW pickup truck or whatever, there has to be, I think, as a fair-minded person, you would at least consider saying that we should have a policy in place. I'm not saying an outright ban. That's not what this says. But it says if that is what the city wants to do, to let out vehicles for political campaigns, or I mean, for example, or for parades or whatever it is, fine. But there should be something that's available to the public, for the public to see and view and to consider and pay for, of course, pending city availability of city resources. That's number 8. Number 10 is, it's, you know, to my way of thinking, I said it at the last city council, but I've said it before, I think that if we're going to expend city resources to make a major change, such as where it looks like is going for PEC, I think to say that, well, look, we had a bunch of public hearings in City Hall and we had 12 people show up. You know, I'm not really sure if that's the best way to get the word out to the public. Because what I would like us to consider is putting a condition on any kind of a bond that to be such as the following: that the bond is contingent upon at least having one meeting open to the public in a public building as proximate as possible to the locus that's being developed. So, for example, if we're going to do some work at PEC School prior to the work being done, I think that a notice should go out to as many abutters as we can in that vicinity of Elmwood, and as, you know, citywide, to say that on August 1st at 6 p.m. we'll have a meeting in the cafeteria from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is not going to be an all-night thing, to let people know exactly what's happening. This is really important. And so that would just be a contingency on a bond, Madam Chair, similar to what we passed maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that all the contingencies to the bond now say that, because as you remember, Madam Chair, when we passed the bond originally, when there were funds left over, the department head could do whatever he or she felt with the money. I mean, it was almost stunning. And so now we have a condition on every single bond to say, if there are funds left over in the bond authorization, whether it's $5 or $500,000 or $5 million, that if you want to repurpose those funds, fine. But you have to come back to City Council to at least tell us what you're doing, and we have to vote on it. So I'd like to have a similar condition added to a bond, that at least one public meeting proximate to the neighbors would be held. So that's that. The last one, Madam Chair, and I hope I'm not going too fast, but I'm just really worried about the time, is agenda item 12. That I did see Mr. Parent's remarks. They're really great, and I really appreciate him. I'm sure he's listening to this meeting somewhere or on tape when he has a chance to hear it. When Mike McManus was here, we did go over this, and it was, you know, Mike was really very, very helpful to this. And what is happening is that we have a sign that's posted, like many signs in Holyoke, that whether you make it was made larger, you could make it the size of a mountain, and it says no left-hand turn into Kmart Plaza from Whiting Farms. If there's a more ignored sign in Holyoke, I dare anybody to find it, because that is on a regular basis, there is a right-hand turn from Northampton Street onto Whiting Farms and a left-hand turn into Kmart Plaza on an hourly or better basis during regular business hours. To the conscientious motorist that sees that sign, what they do is they drive up 150 yards to the fire station and they ignore that sign where it says no U-turns in front of the bays. But I see motorists there regularly that see the no left-hand turn at Kmart. Oh my gosh, what do I do? So they pull up and the first driveway they see is Fire Station 5. And there's a little tiny sign in there saying no U-turns, but of course motorists they're not looking for that. They just want to obey the no left-hand turn at the Kmart sign. So that's the problem I'm trying to lay out. To me, and more importantly to a civil engineer like Mike McManus, there is room for a dedicated left-hand turn lane into Kmart from Whiting Farms. There is also ample room for a travel lane in that same area to keep traveling, I guess that's south, on Whiting Farms heading up to the mall area. So that's the synopsis of the three orders as best I can do it. And I know I have a couple of other orders coming up, but I think they're pretty well pro forma. So those are this committee's been through a barrel of those already, and but I at least wanted to put some context into these. I'm sorry I'm not going to be here because I just really have to go. But hopefully that context, if the committee doesn't feel comfortable with any of them, perhaps you could table them. If this committee does feel comfortable, perhaps you could put into a draft form or a draft language for a subsequent meeting. I know certainly number 12, I mean, there's not much we can do because you need measurements and all that, although I'm almost certain Mike did the measurements for that, but we just didn't get across the finish line with a vote. So, Madam Chair, I hope that's somewhat clear, and that's all I can say at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bartley. I'll see what the will of the committee is. If we feel more information is needed, I'll seek to table till we can get more if we need it. Councilor Jourdain?
Yeah, I was going to speak to number 8. That one certainly had my antennas up. I guess I must have been really more involved in my own campaigns that I didn't take really note of the caravans as much. I was aware that they occurred. I think multiple campaigns did them, but I guess I wasn't aware that.
Well, Kevin, what's the question? I mean, before I go, what's your question? I mean, did it happen? In fact, it did happen.
No.
Oh, okay. I mean, listen, I'm not anti any of that stuff. I'm just saying, there's no policy in place, ladies and gentlemen, on this. I know there's not because I asked. So it was absolutely done by a candidate. There were multiple cruisers, and I'm going to say 5
multiple candidates.
Cruisers.
Multiple candidates.
In fact, multiple candidates. I only saw one candidate, but that's okay. I mean, I'm just, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but there should be a policy. So that's it. Thanks, Kev.
Well, I think there's a lot wrong with it. I don't even know who did it. So I can honestly say that I have no idea which candidate, who did it. To me, it really wouldn't matter if it was any council candidate, mayor candidate, whatever candidate.
I think there were police escorts for parades throughout the city. That's what I noticed. I thought they were police. I thought they were police escorts for the different parades that happened throughout the city. I didn't see it as, I guess I thought it was kind of the norm. We have them for all kinds of escorts for things that block streets. So, right. I mean, I would be also interested in understanding where what this order is getting to, or if we're renting the city police or not, or if that's just a service when streets are going to be blocked, the city police also escort those caravans for whatever they are, but yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point you just made, and that's an important distinction, because if we're going to allow, assuming there was some sort of parade permit, allowed that that, you know, you're required to have a police escort to keep people safe, so nobody crashes into it. I think they do these for large funeral processions and otherwise in town too. So yeah, that's totally appropriate. I mean, that makes all the sense in the world. What I thought I was hearing was like people are renting city vehicles to, you know, put, you know, Jourdain for council signs on the side type of situation or anything like that.
I think that's what this order is getting to, but I'm not sure that's what's actually was happening.
If I may, because I was in one of the caravans. It wasn't for me, but specifically it was for a variety of different people, right? And the one that I was in the first one, there was no police, right? And throughout the process, I thought this is not safe and this is not right because there is no police.
You guys have a parade permit?
No, permit Patty here, my bad. But anyways, so across the board, right? Where it comes down to is if you're going to say no, that you can't pay for the services of the police, right? Then you can't pay for the services of the police. That's fine. But if you're going to say yes, you can pay for the services of the police, then yes, you can pay for the services of the police, right? I understand what you're saying when it comes to like taking a police car and actually me physically renting the police car to drive the police car throughout the city and put Israel Rivera running for City of Holyoke on the car. If that's the case, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? I'm with you 110%. But if it's a parade, procession, whatever you want to call it, and people are paying for the services of a police car to lead in the front and the police car to lead in the back for safety measures, I mean, it makes sense. But if we're against it across the board, I would feel like we should be against it across the board. It's not picking and choosing and splitting hairs.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
It sounds like we need more information about
your opinion
what
is,
exists.
I think I still have the floor, Madam Chair,
Sorry.
right?
Well, it's turning into a round table, and I'm trying to recognize Counselor McGivern, who's got his hand up, actually.
Well, so did I. I mean, a couple people, I was talking, and then Bartley jumped in, and then it sort of turned
You
into
have the
a
floor,
free-for-all.
Counselor Jourdain, and then I'll
Yeah.
recognize Counselor McGivern.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Counselors Givner and Israel Rivera just said. That makes all the sense in the world. If it's a police escort for safety, that's totally fine. I thought I was hearing something about people are renting police cars and jacking them up for with political signs and stuff. That is like crazy, because if that's the case, then I'm just saying there's already state laws against that. You can't do that, because even if you quote unquote reimburse the city for that, that's still illegal, because of the fact that it's like people who say, well, I'm using the city photocopier and I'll pay 10 cents a copy to use the city photocopier to, you know, run off all my campaign flyers. That's still illegal. You're not allowed to do that. And then number two is, it like with the case of police cars or something like that, you could never shake the implication that it's a tacit endorsement of the candidate of the city government. Like it would be if people are, say you rented a police car or something, you're tacitly almost implying that like the police endorse your campaign, which you're not allowed to do. That would also be illegal. So, yeah, I mean, I think they just need to be careful how they do it. But if they're going to allow these parade permits and they need them for safety, then that's totally appropriate. But that's not renting police cars. You know, that's just, you're renting a work detail, which goes on every day here, right? Like I open up a street hole, or people are doing work, or there's funeral processions. Like that stuff goes on all the time. If that's the case, no problem. If it's the other crazy situation, then that would be a problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. I'll be quick, and no problem with the hand raises. Hybrid is good for safety and for other issues, but it's also difficult to manage a meeting. Just a couple thoughts. And I think Councilor Jourdain hit it as far as the political part of this goes. You cannot politicize any city property. And I think this might be a stretch, because I think if the police cars are there for safety reasons, that may be a safety. If the campaign's offsetting the cost of the police cars, that's something to look at it one way. But I'd be interested in hearing, from the law department on the issue of, can city property be used, even if it's just perception, for politicizing a campaign. State law governs funeral processions. It's very simple. They're allowed to go through red lights and stop signs with caution. And on the bigger funeral processions, we do see police that will try to monitor, the dangerous intersections. We have 3 parades, annual parades. Police cars and auxiliary police officers will always be there, but all parades need a permit and a designated time and what streets are going to be closed as the parade goes by. We have 2 big road races, one bigger than the other, but annual ones, the St. Patrick's Parade and the marathon race itself, same thing. They have to have permits, and the designated streets that are closed have to be known in advance. When we do this type of caravans, it's hit or miss when they get to an intersection that is blocked off. And to me, not just the political part of it, but that's very dangerous, because you don't know when the caravan is going to show up, and you don't know when they're going to be going through a red light or through a stop sign until the entire caravan gets through. And I think we need some advice from the law department on what is practical and what is legal.
Thank you. So I would like to entertain a motion from committee to hear from our attorney to give us some advice in this regard as to how to proceed on this order.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All in
Segundo.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Attorney Bissonette or Attorney Degnan?
I think I can address this one, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
The use of city property is strictly forbidden by OCPF and state law from being used in any political campaigns whatsoever. That applies to the use of the city or state seal, applies to any vehicles, applies to any equipment, applies to any computers, applies to any information kept by the city. They're very strict standards. Now, can you lease it for use? That's a subject of some debate. There was a long-standing rule that, for example, public golf courses could not be used for fundraisers. That has been tested and somewhat relaxed in recent years, provided that payments are made suitable to what would be paid for private substitution, so that there's no loss to the taxpayer. So in this instance, for a political use, it has to be treated the same as any other outside agency seeking to obtain services that can only be provided by the city, i.e. public safety and law enforcement. So in that case, a lease would be appropriate, subject to the same rules as a contractor, a receiver working on a public street, the gas and electric digging a hole. Those are all instances where private entities have to pony up to have police protection. There would be no difference. Sometimes Jack and Jill parties, stag parties, all kinds of social events can be required to have police protection. So this would be no different. But as to using them for political purposes, i.e. endorsements, that is forbidden and certainly could not be covered by any kind of a lease. Leases for services as opposed to any other type of use. And those would really, if it was a political campaign involved, I would certainly have whatever department check with the law department before going forward, even entertaining anything that would involve city equipment and a political operation of any kind. Hope that satisfies the question, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And if I can ask a follow-up. So
Certainly.
in the circumstance that we're talking about where it was a caravan related to politics, if I'm hearing you correctly, if they had a permit for a parade and they paid for a detail because the police were acting as a safety provider for a permitted parade, then that would be okay.
Certainly.
But
Be no different than any other parade.
But there'd be no other circumstance that in a political parade, the cars being there could be paid for or be allowed otherwise.
Well, frankly, some of us would probably pay a lot of money to see Izzy Rivera drive a police car.
You're right. A lot of people would pay that. Would catch me dead.
But, you know, that might be okay as a city councilor. He's trying to figure out whether these are good vehicles or not. If he were to hang a sign that says "Vote Izzy" on the side of that same cruiser, not good. Can't be done.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Certainly.
So what is the pleasure of the?
Can we ask one follow-up question?
Sure, Councilor Jourdain.
Yeah, it's like Councilor Rivera was there. He has more of a command of the facts than anybody I've heard here. When that event took place, it sounds like you were there. Is that what happened? Was it the escort situation? Or
Yeah,
was
it's escort. It's all escort, man. Like people.
There were no signs on the police cars.
Nah. No signs on police cars. None of that. I was already dealing with issues with regards to conflict of interest. You think I wanted more of that? Nah, man. I didn't need any more of that. I already had enough heat. Like ultimately, the wording. I think Councilor Bartley, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think for him the issue is the fact that it can be done, right? And because it can be done, that there should be some type of formulated policy around it. Because it can be done, and that's what his issue is. Or again,
it can't be done legally.
Yes, it can. You take a permit, you get a parade permit, and then you get and you pay the police.
You still can't put your sign on those.
No. The wording. I think the wording is not the best choice of wording. But I think his, and again, I could be wrong, and I'm assuming that his main thing is to create a policy around being able to use them as an escort, not to use the car for me to rent it and then put Revolver Izzy around it. If that's the case, then I think that's something for him to explain himself. But I'm going to assume that he was talking about the larger piece where it's like, if there's going to be an escort and we can do that, then to formulate it into a policy somehow, some way. That's where he was like, I'm not against it or I'm not for it, but if you can do it, then we should have a policy. I think that's what I'm understanding from his piece, at least with regards to that. And with regards to what I experienced, and this is not the first time, I've seen this years. This has happened for years, since I was a kid. They've been parading around the city for years, and I've never seen the police actually holding the signs or any of that. It's just the people that are behind them in the cars or in the trucks or whatnot. They're the ones holding signs and saying, yeah, vote for Izzy or whatnot. But it's not police. All the police do is lead the front and one in the back and possibly one in the middle just in case the traffic gets caught up. But they're all paid for, at least to my understanding.
Thank you. And one last follow-up for Attorney Bissonnette. So do we not have a written policy relative to details for parades that have a permit? I thought we probably do have a policy on that.
I believe that we do.
So then that answers this question.
Maybe if we could just get a reference for what that policy is, and we can table this for now, and once we know what it is, then we'll follow up and hopefully close it out.
I believe the police department has a form that is filled out with a request for details, and that form is also used for the parade, I think both road races and whatever other details are being requested. How those things are funded, I don't know, but I know for scheduling purposes, that's how that works. And I can't imagine it would be anything different than what they do for funeral processions. Very similar in nature. It's a vehicular row of traffic that they try to control through safely through intersections. So concept is the same, purpose may be different.
So you think the police
Although
department?
some of us who have been in losing campaigns probably feel like they're going to the cemetery.
So
I can only speak for myself on that.
We got a comedian as a lawyer here, man.
So would you
There
refer
are no
us,
funny lawyers, sir.
right? So would you refer us to the police department then to get the policy?
Sure, Chair Bacon.
I think we could get one from the police department if
Okay.
we wanted to look at it, but certainly could have them add that city equipment cannot be used for political
right here.
purposes.
Chair Bacon.
Okay. Counselor Maldonado Velez.
Thank you. Just as a point of information to the committee, so section 86-262 of our ordinance has literally talks about parades and motorcades and the permits that are required in the whole process as to how we can obtain it. So section
Okay.
86-262 and 86-263.
86263.
Yes.
And what was the first one? I'm sorry.
The one right before that, 86-262.
Oh, okay.
So the first one, the 262, talks about how the permit is required, and then the 263 talks about the actual application and the process to obtain the permit and whatnot, which is
All right. All right. So then
it's all in there.
we do have it before us. So what is the pleasure of the committee relative to item 8?
Motion for item to be complied with.
I'd second that.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So the ayes have it 5-0, that it's complied with. Okay, so now on to item 10. The maker asked us to consider adding as a condition onto a bond where there will be significant building project in an area that the neighbor be afforded a meeting in public as close as possible to the area being developed, and that this be added as a condition to a bond. That's how I heard the request from the maker. The
Madam
maker
Chair.
asked if we act on it or table it. It was the request. Councilor Rivera?
Although I agree with a lot of what is put into here, I kind of feel like, right, public hearing, even though I agree with Councilor Bartley's opinion with public comment and public hearing, where sometimes you only get 5 to 7 to 10 people to show up in a situation where there's a lot more people involved. But I also feel like there's a situation for the ward counselors in that particular ward where it's happening, for them to be able to organize a community meeting with their ward or their constituents at the same time to have these type of conversations, if it's possible. You know, I don't actually feel like and I don't know, because I'm new, right? If they're looking for this to be drafted in ordinance, for it to be an actual law or rule, I don't feel like that we kind of need to do that in a sense, right? I feel like within the wards, we have 7 ward counselors and another 6 at-large counselors. Amongst us, I believe we are able to organize some of these community meetings at least closer to the neighbors so that they can at least voice their opinions and be more involved in the democratic process. I mean, if it's the will of the committee to do something like this, then I'm sure cool. But to me, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Just to clarify, what he asked for is that it be made a condition of a bond, should the city be bonding for a big construction project, just to clarify. Counselor McGivern?
I get the, thank you, Councilor Bacon. I get the issue of neighborhood input and as close as possible where a neighborhood is impacted. It makes common sense, it makes good sense, and I agree with Councilor Rivera, though, that, we all should be, looking to have those meetings, not at the time of the vote of the bond. That's too late.
Yeah.
By the time it comes to a bond in front of us, the feasibility study is over, the architectural design study is over, the decisions have been made, and we're voting on the financing, not on the decisions of what the, whatever building committee or whatever group, what went forward. You need, if we're gonna force that type of meeting, it should be long before we take a vote on the bond.
Counselor Jordan?
Well, first of all, it's always important for us to hear the public, right? They're the people we're here for. They're our customers. And his order speaks to prior to the construction of a public building, right? We don't really construct too many public buildings. So at first glance, you would think that this might have a scope problem in that, we're requiring a number of public hearings before we would develop, any sort of thing we would bond for. But in this case, he's saying bonds relative to public buildings. Those happen far and few between. In this case, what might be the better approach is that we have an ordinance that says that the city, prior to bonding for any public project, shall take into consideration and the impact on the neighborhood where the building is to be located. And one of the ways that they should do that is to include an opportunity for public input from the citizens in that neighborhood. That would be the approach, I think, is twofold. One, it requires that before they do these feasibility studies and they do their ultimate analysis, that they actually take into consideration impact on the neighborhood where a new public building would be located. And what we're saying is that one of the components of gauging that input would be getting an opportunity to be heard, right? So that's basic due process, right? There's two fundamental elements to substantive due process: notice and an opportunity to be heard. So we should do what we can to afford our customers substantive due process, which is notice and an opportunity to be heard. Now, we can count on one hand the number of new buildings we put up. So you would say, well, now you weigh that against the procedural efficiency of being able to do that under normal. You couldn't do that for every bond thing. We go to buy a trash truck. We're not going to have a public hearing on buying the trash truck. But if we did that on the locating of public buildings, I mean, that doesn't seem like too hard of a thing for us to pull off. So I would be supportive of an ordinance that requires the city to gauge the impact on neighborhoods where new public buildings are being located and affording those residents an opportunity to be heard. That's not a big ask. So I think if worded correctly and we limit it in that regard, I think we achieve the public goal here.
So just to clarify, if I hear what you're suggesting, and I'm not sure what form you're suggesting that in, but you're saying to make it a separate ordinance relative to process rather than tying it to a bond.
That's right. Whether we had, all these are typically bonded, but even if we got a free building, I think the same issue would be there. I don't think it really has any correlation to how we're paying for it. I think it's the fact that if you decide to pop in a public building somewhere, you should study how it's impacting the people that are going to be around that building. Mm-hmm. And so I think you could do that with about a 3-sentence ordinance.
Right. So
that just requires that to be done.
So if you're making that as a motion, we could ask legal to put that in language to be looked at a future meeting, for the committee to consider in more depth.
Yeah, I mean, if that makes sense to the other committee members, I'd be interested in their thoughts, but I
Sure.
mean, I think it's short and sweet, and if they think that makes sense, I think it tends to make sense, and we could have the law department draft something up for us to consider.
Madam Chair?
Are there members of the committee that wish to be heard?
Yes.
There's me and cocaine.
Counselor Givner?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just to that point, I guess, why stop there? Why not just do like a city mailing if there's going to be a new city building? Because all the taxpayers of the city pay for that. So I can understand letting the people in a neighborhood know about something that's going up in their neighborhood, but I'm paying for it too. So shouldn't I also know that it's happening? And I don't know that we have a really good way of contacting our city's residents, which is probably why for public hearings we don't have as high a turnout as we might otherwise. I'm sure if a mailing went out about every single public hearing, there'd be more people involved in the process. But of course, that's unreasonable. However, considering, like Councilor Jordan said, how often do we have a new public building? It's not something that happens all the time. So perhaps we could go a step further in deciding how we want to notify the city residents and taxpayers of something that they are going to have to pay for, regardless of whose neighborhood it's in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Counselor Rivera.
Yes. So of what I was going to say is similar to what Counselor Givner says with regards to if we're going to have like public input for a public property or public building, I would prefer it, or I mean, it would be, to me, it would make more sense to have the whole, like all the public involved, not just a particular neighborhood, because that impact is not just going to affect that particular neighborhood. Because if it's a public building, usually it's a building that's going to do public good or public service for the community overall. So the idea is, if it's let's say it's a hospital or a school or a new pediatric or birthing center or something, right? Like, I'm not saying that that's what we're going to do, but ultimately it's like that's something that impacts the whole community of Holyoke, not just that particular neighborhood. So like that's something that I feel like it have to be open up to everyone, but then that would take us back to public comment, right? Because that's what we already offer. We already offer public comment in a sense, or a public hearing, my bad, a public hearing, right? And if people don't show up to the public hearing here, then maybe taking it the next step further would be having all ward counselors having a particular meeting within their neighborhood with their constituents about these particular issues. So that way it's across the board and it's more targeted and centered around hearing from the public in their neighborhoods, in their space, equally and equitably for everyone, instead of just that neighborhood. Because if we're doing the new school, for instance, here at Peck, that new school doesn't just impact the people that live in that community. It impacts the kids that are possibly going to go to that school too, or the taxpayers that are going to be trying to help pay for the bonding of the school too. So there's a larger piece to it than just the people in that community that are impacted. I just wanted to highlight that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would just note that it would be sort of, I would liken it a little bit to, say, the public safety meeting that you just held. You held it at the senior center instead of City Hall so that more people could access it and be heard and get feedback. So you were trying to reach out more to the community, and that, I think, is the spirit of what we're talking about. And I think if it's the will of the committee, we can ask the legal department to draft up a legal form, which we can certainly then modify. And they've heard the comments about in the neighborhood and beyond the neighborhood. And I think they'd be able to craft some language for us to look at maybe in June to see what the will of the committee is at that time. So I think our legal representatives are hearing us, and they're hearing in the local neighborhood, and they're hearing beyond the local neighborhood. We have a motion that's been made to ask legal to draft it into a form that we can then further discuss and potentially amend. Is there a second on that motion? I'll second the motion. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
No.
opposed?
One.
Okay, so 4-1, that will go to legal to draft into form that we can look at again, and I'm thinking we'll take it up in June.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Rivera.
could we ask or add legal to see, because I want to know what the difference is going to be from that in a public hearing, other than the fact that it'll be just in a centered community for one particular population.
So when they put it into legal form, they'll give us the language and we'll be able to see. I mean, the public hearings have certain defined notice requirements,
Well,
and
then
I'm
can
not
we ask for
thinking.
them to compare and contrast for us too at the same time? Because
Sure. If to our legal folks, Attorney Bissonette and Attorney Degnan, if we can be provided with the differentiation between what this public meeting might be compared to a public hearing for benefit of the committee, that would be helpful.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that passed on a 4-1 vote to ask legal to give us form draft for June on this item 10. Thank you. So now on to item 12. On item 12, we all received the summary.
Oh, what am I
I'm hearing
missing? I'm
somebody's
missing
radio.
something. Somebody hit a home run.
So on item 12, our city engineer, Bob Parent, showed us what the change in ordinance would be, which would be eliminating the fact that there is no left turn allowed. And as he pointed out recently, we had put a larger sign. In the past, we had had discussion about making the left-hand turn, which to his point, many people are making, made legal. This was a number of years ago now. At the time, for whatever reasons, I don't remember specifically, it was not passed. I don't know if it was a matter of safety concerns or cost or both, or any objections perhaps. But as Councilor Bartley stated, it did get worked up in terms of what would be required, and that it is apparently doable. Under the note, and I believe everybody on the committees had a chance to read this, so I wasn't planning on reading it word for word into the record, but does somebody on the committee need me to read it into the record?
It's not too long, go ahead. He gives a recommendation on allowing the left turn or not.
No.
Well, okay, so specifically what he said.
'Cause, I mean, that's the main issue here is.
So
Well, it's not precise, so let me just read it. As recent as June 2019, the city council adopted an order directing DPW to install a larger no left turn sign at the entrance to this plaza, so it appears that there have been past concerns about this intersection. We understand that this may be due to potential conflicts between vehicles traveling downhill around the curve on Whiting Farms Road and vehicles turning left into the plaza. It would be helpful to better understand the background of the current order and any concerns that councilors may have had regarding this intersection before making a recommendation regarding removing the current left turn restriction. There were only a couple of us, I think, on the council at that time. Councilor McGivern might have some other specific memories. Kevin, you might.
I know the history of it. I'm familiar with the history of that left turn.
Right, and there were, my recollection was that there was a certain amount of support for it because people are doing it all the time anyway. But there may have been some objection at the time. But anyway, he goes on further to say, note, what is suggested in this order would require reconstruction of the island at the plaza entrance and restriping and painting of arrows and signage to identify the left-hand turn and through travel lanes. In addition, an analysis of the need for a dedicated left-hand turn lane should be conducted. Typically, left-hand turn lanes are warranted when there are concerns about long delays to through traffic caused by vehicles waiting to turn left. That does not appear to be the case at this intersection. Even if there were some delays, the impact of these delays may be offset by the desire to improve safety at the intersection by prohibiting left turns. Now, that's his statement. So he doesn't really make a recommendation one way or the other. What I heard from Councilor Bartley is we have a situation where people are making the left turn, and they have been for years. And I think all of us who go up and down there know this happens. We see it happen, right? So I think he's trying to see if the committee wants to look at making it legal and making it safe to be legal. The other part I'm hearing from the engineer is that he doesn't seem to be seeing that you need a dedicated left-hand turn lane because he doesn't see that there's that much traffic going in to take the left, because you can go straight and go into the plaza by taking a right at that intersection also. So anyway, Councilor McGivern.
I think it was, Councilor Bartley who asked us to dedicate or to take away that left-hand turn, which makes sense. But because of the speed of traffic coming down Whiting Farms Road. But the other issue, if I remember correctly, was people coming out of the plaza trying to take a left-hand turn at the same time going up Whiting Farms Road. And it became a crossover with three different vehicles coming from different angles, trying to go into their each other's space. A left-hand dedicated lane only works if you have a stop where the vehicles coming at you are stopped, or vehicles coming out of the plaza are stopped to give time for the car to go in.
Thank you. Councilor Jordan?
Yeah, so just by way of history, forever in a day, left turn was always allowed into the plaza. Then I'm going to say approximately 20 years ago, it was changed to make it illegal to make the left turn. There was a big discussion at the time. There was engineering analysis. There was traffic accident analysis done. That was a big discussion that took place at that time. And it was determined to, as a total matter of safety, to stop the left turn going into the plaza and requiring everybody to go in at the entrance between Burger King and Taco Bell is today. So that was widely debated at the time and discussed, and that's how the result happened. Have people, bad habits, gone and continued to do it periodically over time? Yes. But if we're going to reverse that, there better be an analysis and a traffic study done to reverse the earlier traffic studies that were done. Yeah. That's why we did this, is because there was a number of horrific accidents there of people coming out, people coming down the hill, and at that intersection, that's why it was made illegal. And they made it with no, what I'm going to describe as a pork chop shaped island that's there. They didn't put that in until probably 7 or 8 years later, because there were so many people taking the illegal left turn still in because of bad habits from the past. And so they finally put that in, and that's been there for quite a while now to try and prevent people, plus the signage, so that you get it, you're not supposed to turn left there. Yeah. If we're going to reverse that, that's a big deal. And we would have to study that to make sure that's safe, because that wasn't just put in like that willy-nilly. And we would need traffic analysis to tell us that's okay And we're gonna need a lot more than the city engineer to give a vanilla, non-committal answer one way or the other. Okay, Ordinance Committee, you do whatever, type of answer. We're gonna need a recommendation based on a substantive traffic opinion that says do it or don't do it, because it's a safety issue. And I wouldn't want to reverse that without having good cause to do that. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
So, could I suggest that we table this to let the maker come in and suggest why we might want to revisit and go through this depth of review before we take an action relative to it? What is the will of the committee?
Madam Chair.
Sorry.
Councilor Givner?
So I feel strongly that these back and forth studies are a huge waste of money. This was figured out 20 years ago for a reason, like Councilor Jordan mentioned. I also feel strongly about, and I think we all know this, but I feel really strongly about our enforcement issues as a city. So number 1 and 2, in either order of importance, are trash and enforcement. Traffic enforcement, speed enforcement, illegal left turn enforcement, I don't know, but I can't imagine why we would table this to look into it anymore when it's already been hashed out. There are plenty of ways to get into the Kmart Plaza, and quite frankly, there's not even anything on that end. There's 3 restaurants, and you can get in from either way into that plaza. So if it were up to me, we would just put a big wall right there, so we wouldn't have to worry about that turning lane at all.
Madam Chair.
Does somebody wish to be recognized?
Yeah, Councilor Maldonado Velez.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, similar to what Councilor Givner said. I remember, I think I was 10, maybe 12 at the time when they changed that they took out the left turn. I remember that being a big thing, and we're like, wow, it's safety. And that was literally the expression we got. It wasn't like, oh, we can no longer take a left turn. It was like, oh, I'm glad the city's doing something because now this intersection feels more safe. As far as like what Councilor Bartley is recommending, I mean, what I'm thinking is maybe what we need is like safety barriers or something, like those like smaller, thinner poles that we can put along like that right in the middle of that intersection to not allow a left turn to happen. Like there's an actual barrier there to not happen. I mean, we can take it to the extreme, like Councilor Givner says, there's nothing on that side and just close that entrance overall. But even at just a step before that, at least having some sort of physical barriers that we can put on in the between those lanes to not allow people to take a left turn out or take a left turn in. I think that would be a better than revisiting this whole thing that was already discussed 20 years ago. Because safety was the call.
I think we've come full circle. So what is the will of the committee? I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
That's
Madam.
okay. I just didn't see it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So let's see. I worked at Kmart when it was there. I worked at Burger King. I worked at Denny's. I worked throughout that whole entire plaza. And I will tell you, and by the way, Councilor Jordan is correct. They did tons of studies, and it would be a waste of our valuable time and other departments to try to figure this out. So if Councilor Bartley is really looking to change what's been changed many, many years ago, then the only thing, and I don't even need an engineer for this, the only thing that would work if they want a left there is to put traffic lights there, which would be spending so much money. And to change this now is no. I mean, I get it. There are people that live closer to that side, and now it's almost like you're changing something that we've worked so hard. Not we. I shouldn't even be part of that equation. I wasn't part of that discussion, but who previous counselors and even counselors who are still here with us today that worked so hard to change this to begin with. So I mean, I get where Councilor Bartley is coming from, but at this point, even tabling it, I mean, and I wish he was here because he should weigh in on this. But if we're gonna table it just so to hear him out, then that's fine. But to continue the conversation, the only thing that's gonna work is a traffic light, and I highly doubt we're gonna spend that kind of money on just for a few people, right? Just
Okay.
just saying. Thank you.
Thanks. Jeffrey, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in as far as the history is concerned, because this was sounding very familiar. And I looked it up, and May 18th of last year, this was actually adopted because the police department was running into the issue where they were actually ticketing people and people were fighting it off because while the sign was there, it actually wasn't in the ordinance table, and it was brought to the attention of the council last year, and it was just adopted in May of last year.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the order either be complied with or no, we're not going to do it. And for all the reasons everybody just said, I think everybody's right. I think we should leave good enough alone. I'm glad to hear we have an ordinance so we can give out tickets if need be. And I like Councilor Maldonado Velez's suggestion. Might be good for another order, but we can put up some additional stuff that stop the lefts. That would be nice.
So complied with?
Sec.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the nice way of putting it.
Oh, okay. So is that a second, Councilor
Yes.
Hübner?
That's a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we are on to item 11.
Motion to take up item 13 out of order for Counselor Anderson Burgos, who's online.
Oh, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Item 13, ordered that we consider do not block the box pavement markings at the intersection of West Franklin and Linden. This would have two benefits: not blocking cross traffic when backed up from the light, and the markings would be an extra indicator of caution to traffic coming down Linden Hill. Now bear with me so I can find the engineer's recommendation. Okay, here it is. From Bob Parent. The DPW does not recommend installation of don't block the box striping at the intersection of major and minor streets, since it has the potential to have a negative impact on the flow of traffic at the major street. This is particularly true if a driver taking a left-hand turn from the minor street pulls into the blocked, quote, quote, intersection and stops to wait for traffic in the opposite lane to create a gap. While we can understand the frustration of a driver waiting to exit Linden Street during rush hour, reducing these delays by creating a gap and potentially blocking West Franklin Street only increases the delays and potential frustrations of a larger number of vehicles on the main street. If the goal of this order is to better mark the intersection, the DPW would consider installing a larger stop sign or a flashing stop sign at this intersection. Although the flashing stop signs can be expensive to purchase and maintain, they can be warranted at intersections with high crash rates like this one. Counselor Anderson Burgos, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so there's currently red flashing stop signs there anyway. And
There is.
cars,
Okay.
yeah, and cars fly right through there anyway. The purpose of this order was there was constituents who live in that general area who are trying to get out and they can't because when traffic does get backed up, it backs up right past Linden Street. So it created an issue, and this was just an idea. I don't know if anybody, any other city councilor who's present with us today in this meeting would have a suggestion as well. I don't see any other option, and traffic lights are going to be way too much money to be installed whatsoever. Because that was one of the suggestions that the constituent gave to me, and I was like, yeah, no, we don't have that kind of money. But so that was the only not expensive option that I came up with. And if Counselor Kevin Jordan is still on, maybe he can, and his expertise, he can advise of any suggestions or anything, or any other city councilor for that matter.
I don't know. Any members of the committee or council have any thoughts on this?
Madam Chair?
Counselor Givner.
I don't know if this is an inexpensive suggestion, but I think traffic circles are the way of the future.
Oh.
Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
They just take up a lot of room.
Yes, and you'll cut it.
Yeah, and there's, but then the traffic never stops. It's just always going. It just keeps going. It just never ever stops. There's no problems.
Holyoke to New Northampton.
Madam Chair.
Counselor Maldonado Velez.
Yep. So I'm just looking at the intersection now. So it looks like the only road that has stop signs is Linden and not West Franklin, because West Franklin just goes straight through. So I'm not sure that installing bigger stop signs or flashier stop signs on Linden would actually like fix the issue. If anything, I think maybe a 4-way stop, and I'm not sure if that's what we want. But that seems to be like the only alternative to actually get Linden people to be able to get out, so that people on West Franklin need to stop. I don't suggest stop signs at West Franklin because I know like the stop light before that is very close, so that may be backed up traffic. But yeah, I'm just mentioning what the layout is and what it looks like right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I guess somebody could file that order and have it evaluated. But I mean, we've been through a number of stop sign orders, and we all kind of know the requirement, right, for stop signs at this point, I think.
I'm interested. Well, I know in Mr. Parents at the very last sentence says this they can be warranted at intersections with high crash rates like this one. I'm wondering if he means to say that this intersection would warrant a 4-way stop. I'm not sure if that is not clear with that, but.
Well, somebody could file the order, and certainly we can get it vetted. I mean, it's a thought. I mean,
I'll talk to you.
I don't know the answer.
Counselor, I can talk with you. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else wish to be heard on this?
Yeah, I mean, Madam Chair.
Counselor Jordan.
Yeah, one friendly suggestion is, Bob said what he doesn't think we should do. Apparently, he's not in favor of the do not block the blocks, but I think the next question that comes from that is, okay, what's your recommendation? What should we do? I mean, he's the engineer. So, we should ask them to give us other alternatives then if he doesn't think we should do this, because the council raises a good point. It's a problem. So what can we do to make it better, if anything?
Well, so he did say that DPW could consider installing a larger stop sign or flashing stop sign at this intersection. Now, it was stated that there already is a flashing stop sign there, but I'm not totally sure if he's talking about the same sign or not. You know what I mean? I'm not totally clear on that.
Yeah, he should probably come back with a solution that's a little more bold than that. I don't think that's going to cut it.
But so he's just to clarify, he's only responding to the order of creating a do not block the box at this point.
That's right. No, that's in fairness, he did his job. But I think the question now is, well, what's plan B look like? And so, Juan or others could file an order to then get plan B put into place if this isn't going to be the case. But how can he do that if he's not told what plan B is? So I think we need to go back to Bob and get a plan B.
May I chime in? Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm remembering that right there where West Franklin intersects with Beach Street, there's supposed to be some major redevelopment of that intersection. So I'm wondering if we should just hold off to see what that's going to look like and the impact it will actually have at Linden Street. I'd hate for us to waste time, not that this is wasting time, but to spend more time on this if we already have something coming our way to address the traffic that is causing the backup all the way to Linden Street.
Okay.
No, because
Okay.
I do remember that that's one of the intersections that Mass DOT was planning on surveying and planning to address as far
Okay.
as traffic flow and navigating.
Oh, okay then. Thank you. Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. I was about to say something similar. If we got a traffic backup from West Franklin and Beach Street all the ways up to Linden Street, the problem's at Beach and West Franklin Street. It needs to be addressed, and there's obviously got to be a big problem. Traffic flow is what the city engineer is talking about. And we need, enforcement of speed limits. We need enforcement of regulations, and we need, safety on our streets. But if we don't accommodate the good traffic flow through major arteries, it just leads to other problems such as the blocking of Linden and West Franklin itself. You don't need a "don't block the box" sign to enforce blocking an intersection. It's against state law to come to a stop in an intersection under any circumstances. Right. So that can be enforced, and just, got to convince the police department you don't need all these extra signs and painted lines. They can enforce that.
Thank you. So Counselor Anderson Burgos, your order asked that we consider it. So at this point, do you consider this complied with from your perspective?
Absolutely, yes. After considering all the conversation we just had, and yeah, I absolutely do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll entertain a motion, committee.
Motion that the order's been complied with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So it's 5-0. Thank you.
Motion to take up item 11.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Item 11, ordered that the Ordinance Committee meet regarding the application process and permitting process in Holyoke as it might compare with neighboring communities. The purpose of this order is to determine whether Holyoke is making it more difficult to attract new development projects, both in terms of time and expense required, than other cities in the area. Now, this was filed a long time ago, and I don't know what the thinking behind it was, other than to maybe do a comparison. I wanted to bring it up in committee first to see if there are any particular points or issues held by committee members. Otherwise, my idea would be to clear it out of the jacket if there aren't any, because it's from a prior session and a prior counselor. But if there were issues that this order was timely on, I wanted to give the opportunity to move on something. So the planning department is waiting to see what the will of the committee is. Thank you.
Leave to withdraw. I'm down for a motion to leave to withdraw.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So that is a 5-0 vote to give leave to withdraw. So I'll entertain a motion on item 14. Actually, 14,
It's pretty long.
15, 16, 17, 18.
All traffic.
Yeah, 20, 21, 22, and 23 could be taken up as a package, and I can run through the engineer's report if the committee so wishes.
That's fine.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so item 14, filed by Counselor Givner, was ordered to create a single lane out of the 2-lane one-way roads in Ward 4 to include Beach between Hampshire and Hamden, Linden between Hamden and Sargent, Hamden between Lincoln and Pearl, Dwight between Nonotuck and Linden. If we're serious about wanting safer streets, we must create deterrents to speeding by eliminating these lanes and turning them into marked turning lanes. Adding parking and additional bike lanes will discourage speeding while creating traffic safety through clarity and additional parking. So the engineer responds, each of these streets presents different opportunities and limitations, and each should be evaluated individually before any changes are made. Eliminating a lane by itself may not reduce speeds and may create high levels of congestion that result in shifting of traffic to other cross streets, creating new safety concerns. Linden and Beach Street observations. Although Linden and Beach Streets appear similar, the paved width of Linden Street is about 4 feet less than Beach. This is likely why no parking lanes are painted along the street, even though parking on both sides of the street is common. Parking along Linden Street may have the effect of lowering vehicle speeds, since narrower driving lanes tend to slow down vehicles. Driver speeds are heavily influenced by the level of comfort that drivers experience when driving along a roadway. Wide open roads with no encroachments generally result in higher speeds as compared to narrow roads with numerous encroachments on the road shoulders. Hamden and Dwight Street observations. Hamden and Dwight Streets function differently, even though they carry traffic in opposing directions. The paved widths of these two streets differ and vary along their lengths. A significant portion of the Dwight Street traffic exits at Pleasant Street, and much of the remaining traffic exit at School Street. Traffic volumes are therefore greatly reduced at the Dwight Street and Linden Street intersection. Hamden Street carries very large volumes of traffic through the city and exiting the downtown area, and there are significant delays at times on Hamden Street approaching the Pleasant Street intersection. Some of the vehicles exit Hamden Street at Pleasant Street, but many of these vehicles continue along Hamden Street to get to Northampton Street, East Hampton Road, and I-91. Traffic assessment. The assessment of these streets should include the following steps: collection of traffic data at each block along the street to assess traffic volumes versus capacity. 2, collection of traffic data at each of the intersections, including turning movements and traffic signal timings, to determine the impact on signal operation, potential need for turn lanes, and signal modifications. 3, development of roadway layout alternatives and associated costs. The DPW can complete basic traffic counts, but we do not have the staffing, equipment, or expertise to conduct the multiple simultaneous traffic counts that are needed for this type of evaluation. In addition, we don't have the expertise to conduct the detailed traffic analyses needed to support these types of roadway changes. The traffic assessments outlined above would have a cost in the range of $25,000 to $50,000, with Dwight and Hamden Streets being on the lower end of this range due to fewer intersections and a shorter length, and Beach and Linden Streets being on the higher end of this range. Funding would need to be obtained to complete this work, since it could not be supported by the DPW budget. If the city was to move ahead with assessing the 4 streets listed above, we recommend that Dwight Street be given the highest priority. The reason for this is twofold. In general, Dwight Street heading toward Linden Street appears to carry a lower volume of traffic than the other streets and may be a better candidate for a lane reduction. In addition, Dwight Street from Northampton Street to School Street will be heavily impacted by the upcoming Holyoke Waterworks Phase 2B water main replacement project, with repaving likely to happen during the 2023 construction season. This would be the ideal time for the city to make improvements to the street to support a lane reduction. So that was quite a lengthy answer that unpacks a lot.
Well, Madam
With
Chair.
a price tag.
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Counselor Givner, yes, it's your order.
So my intention with orders like this is to continue to highlight that we have traffic enforcement issues in our city. We have speeding. We have lack of parking for those who live in Ward 4. That's a common problem. And it seems like there's no assessment that involves, or no recommendations that involve any kind of speed reduction mechanisms anywhere in our city, and there's no enforcement of our traffic laws. So I find myself looking for innovative ways to continue to address this, and I do think, as expensive as it might be, that reducing traffic speeds would really increase the quality of life of people in our city. And I'm sorry if I don't care about creating traffic when our speed limit is 25 miles per hour and people shouldn't be going that fast anyway through our city. So I will continue to look for ways to figure out how to do anything to reduce speeding. And yeah, that's what I have to say.
I hear you, and I do share your frustration on particularly the speeding issue. Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon, and my heart goes out and with Councilor Givner. For many years, I fought the battle of speeding on Beach Street, speeding on some of the side streets, and the problems that were created when I-91, the path of I-91 was changed back in the 60s. And no, I was not on the city council back in the 60s. But there was a major battle about that, and we paid the price in a lot of these downtown neighborhoods with these one-way streets. But I will point out, not so much on Linden Street, but on Beach Street, on Hampton Street, Lincoln, they are, in Dwight Street, they are state highways. They are also main arteries within the city, and traffic flow is important, although I agree speeding is a big part of the problem I hear Councilor Givner is most worried about. Beach Street was an interesting hodgepodge of whiffs, where when the state came in and redid it back in the late 80s, early 90s, they redesigned everything, but allowed for the 2 lanes to keep traffic going from Mackenzie Field on down through the Muller Bridge, which is the through traffic of people using the state highway for their destinations, of course. The interesting thing about what the state did and worked for many years is they synchronized the traffic lights and put signs up, and those signs are still there. If you leave West Franklin Street, Resident Boulevard, if you leave Sargent Street, and as you leave, if you're at a red light and you go into a queue of a green light, 25 miles an hour, the next stop light will turn green. If you go faster, you'll get there too early and you'll have to stop. What I'm afraid of is if we went to one lane on any of these roads, we'll see what's happening on Linden and West Franklin Street when the traffic backs up during that, I'm assuming, mostly during the commuter hours. And we'll start having backed up traffic on all the streets because there are major arteries of the city that cross city traffic flows that go through Beach Street, that go through Dwight Street. So my heart is, and my pitch has always been, we have to start, enforcing speeding laws. And if we do that, and we don't even have a traffic bureau these days, but if we enforce our speeding laws themselves, that should take care of itself. But it takes police officers with radar, police officers giving out tickets, and the enforcement of not just people who are traveling through our city, but people who live in the city and are speeding also. So unfortunately, it is traffic mitigation. It probably would work, but it would come with a price to pay.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard on this? I'm not hearing or seeing anyone. Councilor Givner, what is your pleasure on this? Well, I shouldn't say pleasure. What do you wish?
Well, what I wish. Yeah, I guess I'll make a motion that it's complied with, since they did look into it and tell me that it's way too expensive for us to do anything about it.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. Item 15, that the DPW install a no parking sign within the appropriate required feet from the intersection of Elm and Sargent adjacent to 140 Sargent. As recommended by the city engineer, this will inform residents of the feet parking to intersection requirement and will reduce the hazard posed by the existing blind spot. Our engineer writes, if this order is adopted, the DPW will install a no parking sign 20 feet from the intersection of Elm and Sargent adjacent to 140 Sargent. No ordinance modification is required since parking within 20 feet of an intersection is already prohibited by city ordinance and state statute. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Yeah.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 5-0 approved. Okay, item 16, ordered that a no trucks or tractor trailer local traffic allowed sign at the bottom of Michelle Lane. Currently, the sign says no exit. And 17 is basically the same thing. Discussion on Michelle Lane that the city DPW post truck restriction signs at the front of Michelle Lane. The engineer says, as noted at the March 8th meeting, applying for and receiving Mass DOT approval for a heavy vehicle restriction is very time consuming and is highly unlikely that it would be approved for Michelle Lane. Truck restrictions are discouraged by Mass DOT except in unique situations and are heavily opposed by the trucking industry and federal regulators who see them as restricting interstate transport. Nighttime restrictions, if desired, are not as much of a concern of regulatory authorities. Note, the Mass DOT approval process requires review by the District 2 office in Northampton, and Mass DOT Boston has ultimate approval authority. Based on this information, we do not expect that Mass DOT would approve a truck restriction for Michelle Lane. A truck exclusion that is posted but not approved by Mass DOT is not enforceable. However, if the City Council voted to have a truck restriction posted for Michelle Lane, the DPW would comply with this request. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Motion that it.
I had a question, but
Councilor Jourdain?
I'm kind of intrigued that there would be any heavy, like tractor trailer trucks going on Michelle Lane. Michelle Lane, isn't that the new cul-de-sac that's off of by George Frost Drive and West Cherry Street? I mean,
I don't know.
yeah, I believe so. I believe I have that right. That I think there's like 7 houses on the street. I'm surprised, but
Yes.
I could imagine that if they are getting that, that must be a wrong turn. Like, what truck would possibly want to go there other than a delivery truck, like a UPS or FedEx truck on that street? It's a dead end. It doesn't go anywhere. It would seem to me like you'd be going to HCC maybe to make a delivery. Why on earth would you ever want to go on Michelle Lane? So it makes no sense to me. Like, it's not a cut through street to get to something else, but nevertheless, if the neighbors want it, I'm in favor, even if it puts a sign that says no at the entrance of their street. It's no, whatever we're going to call those big trucks. I think they must be getting concerns and worries that there's apparently people doing it. For what reason, I have no idea why they would do it.
Well, so right now there's a sign at the end of the street that says no exit. So anybody going in there knows they can't go through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can add, and I don't know the specifics of this, but up at where 202 takes the left or the right on Homestead, they were getting messed up with their GPS and going down that little tiny street because they were just following the GPS. And so we had a lot of troubles until we got it marked so clearly, that there's nowhere to go, So it might be one of those, but.
It could be. It's in the history of Holyoke, it's certainly a relatively new street. It's only been there. Because I lived on Jarvis Avenue for years, and they were putting that in, and they did put it in when I was still living on Jarvis Ave and right behind our houses there. And so maybe that's.
Right. And
12,
we do,
12 years
right.
ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't see any harm in putting the no truck sign. We'll put it right on the same post as the no exit sign. And
So is that a motion?
yes, that's a motion to do that. The neighbors want it. That's,
Madam Chair, my hand is up just in case.
Oh, Counselor Rivera, sorry.
Um,
We
I
can still
guess-
discuss under a motion. That doesn't,
okay, my bad. I didn't know.
it doesn't hurt
So-
anything, no.
All right. So, just to like Kevin's point with regards to the truck being the truck, the possibility of a truck being there, period. I think, and I noticed this throughout some of different places throughout Holyoke, there's maybe a growing population of truck drivers that live in Holyoke and they bring their trucks home. And it could be that maybe one of the person lives in that neighborhood and just maybe parks the front of the truck there. I know in the flats, there's a lot of different trucks being parked in different spots. And that's because a lot of the people down there are truck drivers. That's a new thing. I guess I would be interested in finding out if people live in that neighborhood that are truck drivers too. But then the other piece I wanted to highlight is, I think I heard that the city engineer said that if DOT didn't really put that up, that it's really not enforceable. I mean, we can put a sign up, but it would just be us putting a sign up.
That's true. It is not
Right.
enforceable.
So in a sense, I mean, would we be telling residents that we're doing something just to say we're doing it? Because when they get mad and they call us on it and they're saying, hey, but the sign says this, but it's really not enforceable. So like, that might send some mixed messages at the same time.
Well, so this is why I'm usually inclined, if we cannot understand the why of an order and the maker of the order isn't here, I'd be inclined to table it so the maker
That's true
can
too. We
tell
should
us
table it. I mean, that's up to
why.
you guys.
You know?
Yeah. No, those are my questions. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so, I mean, it would be in order to do that, or we could defer to the ward counselor and approve it.
how about this? I would like to just approve it to put the sign up. I'd be shocked if McGee filed this with zero reason, but if something, still has to be approved by the full city council. We'll have a chance to talk to Todd between now and then. If for some reason we hear something from him that sounds sketchy, which I doubt we will, then we can always send it back to committee. I'd like to keep it moving because this is a really nice neighborhood. They're all brand new homes. And if they're getting big tractor trailer trucks or these type of big trucks driving down their street when there's no plausible reason why that should be occurring, I want to see if we can protect these folks. But if you're right, if it's something punitive like, somebody's trying to target somebody that's a resident there who works for a trucking company, although I gotta say, I'd be pretty hot on a narrow street like that on a cul-de-sac if somebody would park a big tractor trailer truck on the street and that was my neighbor, we'd have a conversation, but we'll see. Because if we table it, you're looking at weeks before it could be addressed.
Well, here's the thing, if the sign is there and the people are going down there because they're just sort of blindly following their GPS,
Then they're not going to
because
see the
a guy
sign
just
either.
drove onto the bike path in Northampton following the GPS.
Yeah.
I mean, you did read that article, right? So
Yeah.
I'm guessing it might be something like that, but that's speculation, but it was happening up on McGrady. And so, it can. So right
Madam
now,
Chair.
somebody has made a motion to approve putting up a no truck sign.
No.
It needs a second if we want to move it. I'll second it.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
No.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
3-2.
Yeah, and if there's a problem, we can always send it back. We'll find out.
Yeah, I mean-
I just don't
Yeah.
think we should put out unenforceable things. We already have tons of things we don't enforce.
Oh,
Well,
well, you'd be here all
and you know-
night if that was the case. We do tons of things that DOT doesn't necessarily approve everything. So
Yeah.
that's not, it's a factor,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't let that be the total gold standard, like, you know, they're handing you the tablets of the Ten
Or
Commandments.
like another sign that says "Don't go down here." If they're not reading the signs, they're not going to see the no truck sign either. No, I don't know. I guess I'm just
Yeah.
naive.
But you know what, this is a situation, in my opinion, you know, how I look at these is, these people just built very expensive, brand new homes in Holyoke. And if all they ask you for is don't have a truck sign at the end of their street and they're paying all these taxes, why not help them out? You know, what's the harm?
Okay, so that passed on a 3-2 vote to post the sign. Okay, so now we are on to item 7. Oh no, we did 18. We are on to item 20. So item 20 is, and I'm going to do all the handicap signs together, okay? Ordered that a handicap sign be placed in front of 60 Northeast Street for Mariano Gomez. Ordered that 2 entries for handicap space on Brown Avenue be deleted as they're not needed. On the westerly side at a point 282 feet south of Laurel Street, and the other on the east side at a point 80 feet northerly of Willow Street. Engineer noted that these 2 spots do not have any signs posted and are likely legacy entries in the ordinance table. Item 22, that a handicap sign be placed at 204 Oak Street for Josephine Rivera. And item 23, that a handicap sign be placed in front of 107 Brown Avenue for Elizabeth Delgado. Now, on all of these, the engineer has provided the measurements and the placing. We will still need them in legal form for city council. And the engineer has just noted what entries would need to be deleted and what measurements would need to be added and language to add those. And it's my understanding that Disabilities has recommended the approval of those. Jeffrey, jump in if you have anything contradictory, but we don't put them on the agenda unless they're favorably recommended without a note. So if you vote yes on these, you are voting to make all of the recommended changes to add and delete the handicapped spaces as I just read. Is there a motion?
Motion to agree with everything you just said.
And the motion is to accept the engineer's recommendations on those items that I just read. Is there a second?
Second.
All in
Segundo.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and now we are up to the last item, 19. Now, I'll entertain a motion. All in favor? Aye. To review and amend section 6.4 of the zoning ordinances to be in compliance with the consent judgment and permanent injunction ordered by Honorable Mark G. Mastriani, dated April 12, 2019, and any other updates to streamline the ordinance. The public hearing was closed on 4/26. We have a recommendation from the planning board to approve the legal form, which we have all received before tonight. And so I would love to entertain a motion to pass this ordinance.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
I'm
Councilor Maldonado?
I agree with this order. I just don't have any actual legal language. Not sure.
Okay, so the legal language was given to us at a prior meeting, and it's very brief. It's 1 page, and it deletes the offending portions of the sign ordinance on which the judge found it to be in violation of the law. if you recall, we had tried for months to get a subgroup working on the broader sign issue, but there just was no appetite for it. And so the recommendation from the planning board was to adopt that form that was provided to us in the public hearing. You may recall that it was submitted in that public hearing before it was closed.
Okay, no, that's what I figured. Thank you. Sorry, Jeffrey was just talking to me. So I mean, I do have the letter from John Kelly, Chair John Kelly from the planning board. I do have that. And he just told me, like what you just told me, that it was given to us at the last meeting. I just have to make sure I have it somewhere. But yes, I'm in favor of this.
Okay. But what it did is it just deleted 2 sentences out of the ordinance that caused us to be in conflict. It was around the bumper stickers and restricting signs for periods of time.
Yep.
If that helps.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Is anybody ready to make a motion on this?
I made a motion that it be adopted.
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will recommend this ordinance amendment to the full council 5-0.
Motion to adjourn.
I believe we have covered every agenda item. If I missed anything, speak now or forever hold your peace. But I thank you very much, committee. It was a very constructive meeting tonight. Covered a lot of ground. And I'll happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? No debate.
Have a good night.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good evening.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Take care now.